Good evening, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and call the Nottingham Planning Board Wednesday, October 26, 2022 meeting to order. Before we get started, I know more people came in. If you haven't, please just sign in on the sheet at the back of the room. I'll go around the room at the table and have every member introduce themselves, please.
Sandra Jones, alternate.
Robert Davies, alternate.
Gary Anderson.
John Warren. Ian McKinnon.
Ed Reveal.
Susan Mooney.
Sherry Sandler.
Charlene Anderson.
Blair Haney, SRPC.
And for the record, Ms. Jones and Mr. Davies will be participating as alternates tonight. They will not be voting as we have a full board tonight. So we have a number of items on the agenda tonight. Before we get into those, one item I wanted to bring up at the beginning of the meeting instead of waiting towards the end is recognizing Mr. Lemieux, our land use clerk. Tonight is his last meeting with us, so I'm putting him on the spot, but I just wanted to thank him for all he's done for this board in the town in that role. He came in about 18 months ago, I think, 12 months ago, and jumped right in and did everything with a smile on his face, and it was a great addition for the town, and he's gonna be surely missed for this board. So thank you for all you've done, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we will move on to the public hearings. We have 3 cases tonight. All are continuations from prior hearings. All have been accepted as complete, and we'll take them in order. So the first is case number 22-009-SUB. It's an application from Robin Comeau requesting a 2-lot subdivision. The property is located at 176 Stevens Hill Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire, identified as tax map 49, lot 4, and Stevens Hill Road is designated as a scenic road. Is anybody here for the applicant? Yeah, come on up. If you can, just introduce yourself, and then,
Tony Comeau, I'm here on behalf of Robin Comeau.
okay, and then it's been a little while since we've had this case continued a number of times. So I know there has been some work that was being done on your part or the applicant's part. Can you just bring us up to speed as to where things are? I know we've received some new materials today or yesterday.
Yep, so we withdrew the after-the-fact permit, we withdrew the conditional use permit. We are going to begin the restoration process with the state, and go around with the driveway. Restore that area.
Okay, so you said withdrew the CUP, the conditional use permit? Okay, all right, thank you. And I know we had a letter from, I'm assuming it's a lawyer, just discussing from Jeremy Eggleton at Orrin Reno, just discussing the wetlands violation and the process that's ongoing with DES. It indicates that the trust is in the process of addressing the violation with DES, and it will either be approved post hoc through an after-the-fact dredge and fill permit, or remediated to the satisfaction of DES, regardless of whether or how the lot is subdivided or who owns it. Therefore, the existence of the violation and pending remediation process is not a factor in your determination about whether the proposed subdivision meets the requirements of the town of Nottingham subdivision regulations. So we can talk about that in a minute, but I'll have you, I know we received, it looks like 2 revised plans tonight. Would you mind kind of giving us a overview of those?
It should just be the 1 5-acre lot showing the corrected driveway going around the wetland area completely.
Okay.
Which we would need a new driveway permit for as well. New curb cut.
Yeah, and I think we had received 2 different versions. One still has the curb cut near the cemetery and then kind of meandering through the field. The other one, which I don't actually have a copy of.
This one, the one that's 2 separate, basically 2 options.
Yeah, with the driveway closer to the, what would be the new lot line between the 2 lots.
So, I'll jump in quick. So I spoke with Robin.
Yep.
She wasn't sure, she was on the road, which.
Oh, I'm sorry, this one does have 2, yeah.
So the one you have, Ed, that should be the correct one.
Okay,
So the one, I put 2 in your folders because I need to confirm with Anthony first, or Tony first. But I didn't get the chance to pull them out of your folders. It's the one
I
with
got
the
it.
new curb cut if you're on Stevens Hill looking at the property, it's the one with the driveway on the right-hand side.
Okay, so one is labeled as, existing and one is labeled as proposed, okay,
Proposed is the one with.
okay. And that goes back to kind of what the board had suggested was, for sightline with, in distance to that cemetery and the hill that's right there, to move it to this side, which would avoid the wetland too. So it looks like that's what is being proposed now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. And no other changes on this plan?
Nope.
And Ms. Cheney, you probably haven't had a chance to even review this, correct?
I'm just seeing it now.
Yep.
It looks like the only thing that changed, it's just the separate driveway. No, you guys haven't changed a lot, nothing's changed on the lot.
That was changed.
So it brings back to the board, regarding the legal opinion that, so the current wetlands situation that's occurred, whether it's a dredge and fill or a, ad hoc, or I'm sorry, or a remediation of that, I think that does still come to the board as to our purview in that we would still, if it was to remain as a fill, it would require a conditional use permit. Because we require a conditional use permit for any fill and dredge of wetlands. So if the plan potentially there is to have that pushed through as or if it's successful with the DS side of a revised permit, after the fact permit, allowing the dredge and fill, I think it would still have to require a conditional use permit from this board.
But it sounds like they're pulling, right, they're doing with the restoration, not.
No. That according to the lawyer, the legal
Is that what
letter.
you just said, that you're gonna do the
We are
restoration?
doing the restoration
So
plan.
they're pulling the CUP and going to perform the restoration to remediate the wetland impact.
Okay, but that's conflicting with the letter dated today from the lawyer, which states that it will either be approved post hoc through an after the fact dredge and fill or remediated.
So I think we'll decide, obviously, if there's a decision made, it's been stated by the applicant's representative, it's going to be remediated.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if, not trying to bind
see
you
what
to a
you're saying,
decision
though.
tonight, but,
Yeah.
so the lawyer said one thing, you're indicating another thing, so maybe that decision was made in between the draft coming out,
Or there's some confusion.
or this confusion on the, so
No, we're doing the remediation,
remediation, okay.
absolutely.
Okay, because if this were to be approved, that's gonna be one of the conditions, I'm sure, is, that's either remediated or would require resubmittal for a conditional use permit. Okay, thank you. Does the board have any other discussion? I do see on the notes, I'm sorry, on the proposed driveway, that it's, indicating that it would meet, and this was one of the questions, would meet the town grade requirements, so no waiver required there, request being requested.
Did we receive a full plan, or did we only get, do we have a new full?
That's,
This is all we read.
so that actually, we received on 8 section.
Yeah, we
It's
had
on the
the-
website, so that's been floating around. Tony Price went through this a little bit, but I think they were waiting to hear from DES to decide on what they did, they were gonna do, because they had a couple versions, and so it came back to that. But I do not have full plans, like printout plans, but I
Right.
do have them, they are on the website. Or, they should be, if they didn't know.
Shouldn't we have a new full plan?
We should, yeah.
Right, so,
I have a full size, but it's not the one that shows the, my understanding is that the only difference is there's 2 new green lines and a label proposed driveway. I don't see any changes to boundary lines. They were always proposed in the road easement. Everything else is the same. It's just those 2 green lines on the left side of the new lot with the label.
so is there a plan that shows the new driveway? That's what I'm looking for.
Just whatever was, I'm not sure if there's was this electronic, or were these 8.5 by 11s given to?
So no, I never got the 8.5 by 11s. They were emailed over to me, and I emailed on to you folks, but not.
Yeah. So in theory, there's full size on the computer, there hasn't been a full size updated since, just this 8.5.
It is on the website labeled 829, upside not updated 829.
I have it here, yeah. Not really a board comment, but the, road agent did provide a couple comments on this
Yeah, if you have those, feel free
a
to
while back.
reread those.
So this is, the DPW Director, Sean McLean, provided some comments on a number of applications. His comments on this application were telephone pole by entrance of new driveway location should be moved to edge of new proposed right-of-way. Driveway entrance should be set back to the new right-of-way with drainage swales installed with a culvert. So I was trying to figure out which. I think the pole that he's talking about is if you look at where the new lot line joins in at the road, just over to the left there, there's a utility pole symbol on this side of the road. I think he's asking for that pole to be moved.
I don't have it.
And I'm guessing he's asking for some
have it.
drainage swales along this side of the road. I know it's very tight through here.
Okay, yes, it is, here we go, all right.
What was the date on that comment?
These are October 11th.
Okay, so it should have been based
So
on
this
the
will be off
revised,
what we're looking at.
the revised plan.
Yep. I think a lot of this is, it's not really stuff that would be shown in here, 'cause that's kind of some engineering stuff. I think that falls into maybe some conditions on his driveway permit, in terms of the ditch, the culvert.
Yep.
And I'm not sure we can force the moving a utility pole in a public right of way. Cause also the road is still only single, what, 8 feet wide?
Well, maybe right there it's a little wider, it gets a little narrower right there.
So I think maybe at least note those concerns and any sort of conditions as part of the driveway permit, but they have to coordinate with him anyway.
Yep. Is there additional discussion from the board at this time? Otherwise, I'll reopen the public hearing for public comment.
Yeah, let's do that.
We did have some abutter testimony, specifically when we're speaking towards the conditional use permit in the wetlands. It sounds like a lot of those concerns will be addressed through remediation of the wetland with DES in the withdrawal of the conditional use permit. Okay. All right. I'm just gonna reopen the public hearing. If anybody comes forward, I'll have you step back for a moment, please. So I'm gonna reopen the public hearing. Anybody that'd like to speak for, against, or has general questions regarding the application, please, please come up and please identify yourselves. And again, please keep comments, towards the board, please.
Peter Rowell, a butter, 156 Stevens Hill Road. And I've spoke on this before, and it's kind of hard following this when we don't have a plan. I haven't seen a plan. there isn't a big plan to put up an easel. So
Are
it's
you able
very
to
difficult
project
following
this,
this,
any chance?
know what's going on.
I can bring it up, yep, but these plans have been online, since August.
But
We're gonna, we'll have it projected in a moment.
typically, there is one on the easel here that you look at in a planning board meeting.
Yeah.
That's typically how it goes. What makes it easy to go what's going on. You know, I was gonna, again, does the board have to vote on the withdrawal of the conditional use permit? No, you just accepted it's gone, correct?
The applicant withdraws it, it's,
Fair to say it's gone, the applicant did withdraw it, right? That's what I'm hearing.
That's what they've indicated,
Going
yeah. So if an applicant were to, come forward again and request a conditional use permit, it would change the application, so it would require, require butter notice again.
Right, the applicant's saying he's gonna restore the wetland,
That is what we have heard tonight, correct?
correct? Okay, I'll go back to where I started with that. You know, I was gonna say approve the subdivision as is with a couple of conditions. Okay, one of the conditions is the driveway runs along the northerly boundary line, which he's saying it's gonna do now. Gonna run the driveway along the northerly boundary
The
line.
plan is coming up, it's just gotta take a minute for it to come into focus. The green is a little bit hard to see. This isn't the one, Kevin?
Yeah,
oh yeah, yep, no, it is, I can just.
Oh, it is, yeah.
starting to- See on the left side of that lot there?
yeah.
So you can see where
That's where the driveway wants to run along, that's kind of what he's telling us now.
Yep.
The drive, that's what they're telling us now, the driveway's gonna run along there. The other driveway shouldn't be shown on the plan, because it's not gonna be there. There should be a note on the plan saying that the wetlands violation, the fill violation is gonna be removed. Just a note saying that, if that's what the intention is. And as far as the road agent's comments, the road is extremely narrow up there. They struggle plowing it. They've knocked the fence over a number of times up there. So this would be the time to get it widened out. While they're doing work up there, they'll have equipment up there to do that. The telephone pole is basically way out in the middle of the right of way there now. Probably gonna wanna move that pole when they put their underground utilities in, down beside that. So that may be something you wanna, put as a condition on the plan also. That we correct those problems. If we get those things on the plan, the driveway on the northerly side clearly shown, the other driveway removed, a note stating that the wetlands will be reclaimed. No. You might even address the letter that DES wrote, you know, the plan submitted and approved by DES on that. Because I'd hate to see this come back again after we've been all through this for 2 or 3 months, and then all of a sudden come back and say, I want a conditional use permit to move the driveway. Right,
Okay,
okay,
good, thank you.
thanks.
So I'm Lauren Chase Rowell, Peter's wife, 156 Stevens Hill Road. So, is this legit to be able to use the August plan, or should there be an updated plan with all the current information on it?
In general, plans are kind of living or items during these phases. So we'll often get to a point where it's, the majority of the information is there. It's accurate to what the final version is gonna look like. And then there's conditions, if an approval is voted on, usually there's conditions on an approval to add additional items to the final plan. And the final plan's not signed until, you know, all those conditions are listed.
Okay, so help me to understand this.
And minor subdivisions, sorry, one more thing. So minor subdivisions, like less than 4 lots we generally have less stringent requirements in some areas than we do for major subdivisions.
So so they have appealed the after the fact permit, which New Hampshire DES denied. So there's, and like we as abutters don't know about that. We don't know what the mediation is, how that's going. We know nothing about that. And it sounds to me like what I'm hearing is some of the approval conditions are based upon what comes out of the DES mediation.
No, not necessarily. So there are two separate processes. So the state law allows planning boards and zoning be more stringent in some areas than state. So we're not overriding the state's process. There's still that state process, but there's also the local process. So in this case, with wetlands, the local process is more strict than the state process. So there's times where an applicant can get a conditional use permit from a planning board and get denied from DES, or vice versa, go through DES process, get approval, get denied from planning board, and then they have to go through whichever tract it is to,
How will the mediation report between the Comos and New Hampshire DES affect the decisions you guys are gonna make?
So that's something we haven't fully discussed up here yet. So what the applicant has indicated to us tonight is that they're planning on remediating the site, working with DES to remediate the wetland. So that process would be most likely a condition. So one of the standard conditions of approval is all state permits received. So we have local permits received and then state permits received. So understanding a remediation process is usually years long. That would be something the board would have to discuss and how we'd want to word that if this was voted towards approval.
So how can I know that as an abutter, like, that the remediation process isn't gonna hurt my land? Or like is the top of the driveway gonna be removed? Or does that get to stay because it's not in a wetland, but get moved away from the cemetery? Like, I'm not understanding what happens to that old driveway, so that we can finally, like, just rest.
Sure. So the verbiage on here isn't clear, and that's gonna be something that the board would request clarification on. Normally, we would see a change in verbiage from existing driveway to add language to be abandoned, something like that, and then proposed driveway. So
Is it going to be seeded, or like, like how, like, see, like, I'm afraid this is gonna get approved. I want it to get approved because I want Tony to be able to go on with his, like, what he needs to get done. But I'm afraid that it's not gonna get done, and I'm wondering what, as the town of Nottingham and the planning board, like, what do we have in place that's gonna protect me, that if they get this subdivision, that this actually gets taken care of?
Yep.
Because we don't wanna be down here for the rest of our lives.
sure. Yeah, valid concerns. That'd be something the board will bring back and have as a discussion point, further discussion point
Before approval or after, like, how does that work?
before any vote was taken. Generally, that'd be one of the items that would be discussed.
And so am I understanding right that this is the second time the CUP has been withdrawn?
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
And in the end, NHDES enforces certain things, and our Nottingham zoning ordinances are supposed to enforce things. Like, how am I to not, like, can you explain that to me? Like, how is this gonna get actually enforced?
Sure, so that, it'll be a little bit difficult and beyond, so this board's not in the enforcement side, our code enforcement and select board are the enforcement side of zoning. So I believe basically the language I've seen so far from our code enforcement officer is there is a process that's already started with DES. So they're not complicating the matter, allowing the DES process to work its way through before any local action, is taken.
Okay, so
Again, that's
now,
beyond, unfortunately, it's part of this application, but it's beyond the scope of, a little bit beyond the scope of the application too.
right, so now what happens if the DES thing says that they can keep the driveway there? Then suddenly, like, the upper driveway is no more, and the wetland doesn't get remediated and they can drive over it, like,
They still can't, they still require a conditional use permit.
Okay.
The town has not approved any sort of impact.
Correct.
and you don't think that that's being, like, litigated at the DES level?
No,
And I think what's gonna get into is.
Can you see my confusion and my concern here?
I do.
I think what we're gonna get into is how the conditions can be worded. There could be conditions in terms of dates and, before condition of, certificate of occupancy, we can have things that are required, and that can be I mean, you can require things like that. There's something that needs to be reviewed by code enforcement before it's granted.
Okay, and not to take any more time, doesn't it seem, because things have really moved around, the target has moved around a lot with this particular situation, isn't it safer to just not approve it until everything's set? I mean, are these conditions just gonna have Peter and I, like, sleepless nights for the next, 3 years of our lives? Like that?
yeah.
That's a big concern of ours.
So, so applicants, obviously have a timeline as well. They can, if they wanted to withdraw and reapproach it after things are done, that's a process, but oftentimes things are simultaneous. There's simultaneous processes that are being worked on. The code enforcement, building inspector, I know in other areas can withhold building permits and withhold, occupancy permits, so, to make sure that conditions are met, plan approval is met.
And he would do that based on your recommendations?
So, the conditions attached to approvals, yep, the notice of decisions and such, yep. Yep,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Does anybody else that would like to speak, for, against, or has questions on the application? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and we'll bring it back to the board, for any further discussion. So for me, again, some of the items that we touched upon and that I'd like just added to any plan would be, I guess, the verbiage of the existing driveway. It's kind of in a way misleading, because I don't want us to construe that if this is an approval, that we are approving that as a driveway, that was not a driveway. So I don't know how they would identify it, because we do want something shown on the plan if there's something there. So we can always keep it as existing driveway, to be abandoned, to be abandoned and
Is there
and
to be
restored.
some, is restoration work required where the driveway was?
It's not even a real, I mean, technically, they never were approved for a driveway there.
Right, it's not really
So-
a
Was a
driveway.
driveway, yeah.
So, well, it's an unpermitted, unofficial access to their property, is what it is. It's not technically a driveway.
Right. But it's there, so we
Right,
want to address it to
absolutely.
make sure that,
Just to be clear,
correct.
right?
But that access was required that there would be some restoration work, because that access,
Onto the wetlands,
right,
not the part from the front of the road,
that's
to the
true,
wetlands.
right.
So I don't think there should be a condition that they have to re-grass the front area or redo anything, they have to repair the wetlands.
Well, it should,
And
'cause-
put the driveway in the proper spot
Yeah.
to get their permit.
Yep. But we need to have to capture some language at least to say to be abandoned, or unpermitted and to be abandoned, because we have in our zoning, our subdivision regs, like, distance for two accesses to a parcel, and this wouldn't meet the distance between. So we're seeing something existing, whether it's permitted or not, a good time to address that is to make sure we record on the plan notes.
Well, how about wording such as unpermitted,
I
previous
think access is
driveway?
a wonderful word that
will-
really
will
describes
be
it.
abandoned as access will be abandoned, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I think what's gonna happen though too is, I mean, we're gonna get into the weeds in terms of how much, what needs to be removed and grass if we're gonna get into restoration, or you say,
Well, the fact
there's
that
going
two-
to be
if
boulders
they
there.
put two
but
boulders
I
in
was
front
just
of
gonna
it,
say,
there you go.
it's as easy as
That's it.
police
Done.
place.
So current
That's something,
access
too,
should
that can
be
enforced
blocked.
by our code enforcement and the DPW
As
director.
long as the
because he
boulders
has-
stay in place, then there it is.
so-
I'm just saying, let's not,
Because the gravel on the lot is legal. If you cut out the access point and you restore the wetland, that gravel in the middle is technically legal.
you can
There's
cut up
nothing to
all
keep
your
you
grass
from-
and gravel, you make your whole property gravel.
Let's not giving people ideas.
I'm just saying. Again, we're not here to start restricting
Right, no,
everybody on
I'm-
their use of their
I'm with
property.
you. I think it
We're
gets
here just to
into-
basically say that you can't use this as a driveway.
Correct.
Well, you
That's
could-
what I'm just trying to express, that we know they're gonna take care of the wetlands, that's part of their plan, and they can't use that as a access point. Put two boulders and
I'm with you there.
Sure,
just let's keep it simple, and
but again,
When the
it's a
verbiage,
hardship on the people that own the property now that we're
when
gonna
the
make them
verbiage
go.
is changed, will that be available for her to see online?
The condition, on the plan,
Yeah,
how does that work with a final plan?
for what?
Usually doesn't go online because it gets recorded and then, we'll have a copy in town and then, register.
And we have to review it, so. I mean,
Correct.
We have to review it for.
so it would be up here for her to see if she needed to see it, if she wanted to see it.
Yep.
We'll have a copy of it.
So again, so it's not what I'm hearing is at least a plan note or changing the verbiage, a plan note in saying existing driveway to be abandoned.
I think just blocked. Say blocked.
Well, abandoned, I think is what we usually use for verbiage there, so it's, again, we just need to capture on the note, because that's what gets recorded in the registry of deeds for, on the plan, so. Oh, and I'm sorry, Mr. Kamal, you're welcome to come back up to the table too, so in case there's questions for you. And I think, I'm not certain it's in our purview to, I don't know if we can require someone to move, or to request them to move a telephone pole, that's not on their lot, even if it's serving their lot, so I think that might be,
I think it's something you guys are gonna have to probably pull power drop off that pole anyway, and the power company's gonna tell you if the pole's too old, they're gonna replace it anyway, and at that point,
Right.
it can be moved, but
yeah,
that's gonna be a
I think a
coordination item.
request can be put in from, I don't know if that would come from the road agent to, I don't even know if this is that Eversource, or is it New Hampshire Electric Co-op?
Eversource, I believe.
Okay, so, to the utility to say, hey, we'd like pole number, whatever it is, moved, 10 feet to the, to the, west. As they plan to potentially expand that right of way.
I have kind of a list of potential conditions that I've been kind of jotting down that kind of correspond, a couple of them need discussion with the board in terms of dates.
Yep.
So I think one of them that's been brought up is that there is, now that they're gonna restore the wetland, the original order for the wetland restoration was issued January 22nd of 2021 with a deadline of July 1st, 2021. As part of this, I don't think the state has followed up with, any additional enforcement that I'm aware of, but we as a board, if we're gonna approve an application that involves restoration, whether it's a plan approved by the state or us, as part of an approval, we can put a date on that. So that it's not 3 years from now when they decide to build, or 2 years depending on the build, that can be something that, we can place a reasonable date on, understanding there's certain construction windows, but I think that's something that people on the board should think about, is if we put a date on that. And that would probably wanna be a note on the plan. And this kind of dovetails into, I agree that the line work that shows an existing driveway, kind of be removed through the wetland, and that area actually be, so I've seen like an area, I think it's 1,400 something square feet of restoration. Is that should probably be outlined and clearly labeled,
Area to be
as the
restored.
restoration area. So that, I mean, it's just a four-sided polygon. So here's where I have for conditions potentially right now. Standard conditions, that are in the staff reviews, fees, plan copies, stamps.
Monuments.
Wetland restoration must be completed per NHDES approved plan. Coordinate driveway permit with DPW director to incorporate 1011 comments regarding movement of a utility pole and roadside ditches and culvert. The existing unpermitted driveway, to be abandoned. Proposed driveway to run along the northern lot line of the new lot 4-1. Remove the double lines labeled shown as existing driveway. And then outline, hatch, and label the wetland impact and restoration area, and then add a note stating that the wetland restoration will be completed by, and then I think we should discuss as a board a reasonable date. And then lastly, because there is a easement being provided on this application and for the road, a description of that road easement, that is being provided to the town, a description of it must be given to the Board of Selectmen, because they have to formally accept it at a vote. I think that was, other than that, I know they made some plan revisions per the subdivision design before, and got all the building envelope stuff like that, so. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on a deadline to complete the
I would suggest a year
restoration?
from now is the deadline. That gives them through the summer to do, I mean, nobody's gonna work on it going forward right now, because it could snow at any moment. But through the summer, and this is a reasonable end of the year that you would have it done.
My first thought was July, just thinking the original was July 1st, 2021.
I agree
So
with
my
that.
mind
So,
first just went
okay.
to July 1st, 2022. That gives a window from, depending on the winter we have, late March, early April through July. And
Absolutely, you're right.
Repair the wetland.
to complete the restoration. This is a date to complete the restoration.
restoration,
Yeah,
that's-
correct. So I don't know,
You mean July of 2023?
sorry, yeah, yes, July 1st.
That's
I
good.
agree with that.
Yeah.
Can I make one recommendation?
Please.
Because of the, I would just reference the plan. Like, if you can find a way to reference this plan by date or something. Just so we know which one's kind of acting as the baseline for what we're talking about here.
The problem is the two plans we have, I think, have the same date.
Oh.
Let me check.
Well, if there's a way that we can identify it, I, just so that like Dale or Kevin, somebody, you know,
We can put a date on this, yeah.
I don't have the other one in my hands, I can't even look to see if there's anything
Yeah, the
different.
date is the same, and
I looked at it on the computer large, and it's just those lines for the driveway.
Do you feel like you're, okay,
Yeah,
Fine.
they already made some of the adjustments from our original, like, bounds with, no more than 300 feet or something like that along the property lines. So the regulation, more the nitpicky regulation stuff was addressed. Alright. I'm just gonna add then the last one, that this approval pertains to a subdivision plan with a date of 8/9/22. That's what this plan says right here, so.
yeah, Nichols had that, so like you said, they didn't have a name change or the date was the same. So that gives them
Make a
a
motion
little
to
bit
the
more of a timeline than the DES original restoration plan originally, that gave them 6 months, basically. We're saying this gives them 8 months.
This is the option to start this fall if they want. The last thing, I don't think it needs to be a condition, it's more of a logistics thing for us, is if, I have no idea where the state process is, or I guess we could figure out whose case this is, but notifying them that we've put a condition? I don't know where I haven't seen anything, so.
The state they should be reaching out to everybody very soon.
Okay.
We met with them last week with Mary Ann Tilton and David Price, let them know we were gonna proceed with the restoration and whatnot.
Okay, thank you.
I do think the benefit now is if we place a date on at the local level, there's a state-approved restoration plan that now does fall into something that Dale can enforce.
Yep.
Understanding before, you know, a state is much more involved restoration plan than something a town would require. So,
And the question, does the restoration have to be done prior to, the certificate of occupancy being?
Generally, if it's a condition of approval, it, you know, if there's a timeline set on it, generally, my understanding is everything has to be
It
met.
has to be done before this, okay.
So it would need to be completed by the date, the July date, and then nothing else could take place if that weren't completed, correct?
So I can change this too and say it can be completed, to be completed by 7/1,
Right,
2023, or prior to CO. If you guys are real eager to build a house, then.
Yeah,
you
2 years
finish in
ago, we were
June,
eager, so.
It can be, we can say or prior to CO. I mean, it's the same.
But excuse me.
And, I would say and, not or.
I
Just
think that fits, it. So, yeah, if
I
they're,
gotcha.
they are planning on building.
I got you.
So the only other thing, I can't remember if you had it in your list there of items, if we need to mention that. I don't think we have to mention it in the notes, cause if the restoration plan doesn't, then it's not gonna meet the conditions, so,
Well,
for,
we're saying that the restoration does have to be completed by a date, so in theory,
Cor-
we're approving.
So we also include in that, not only the restoration, but the inspection by the state after the restoration.
I think it's an I have to double check the restoration, but I believe I think usually the applicant is required to notify DES for the, essentially a notice of completion, and then, yeah, DES
They'll come
goes
out
out
and
and does
inspect it,
a
right?
walk, yeah. Only DES have the time to send people around looking at all this stuff. There's nothing else.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. I'd like some clarification. Looking at a plan that's stated 5/11/22, and it shows the wetland is a poorly drained wetland over to the east, and that's the same configuration that we received tonight on these new plans. However, I don't see any indication that there's a setback from this wetland. Does this delineation include the buffer, or is the buffer extended beyond this delineation of the wetland? And if so, how far does that buffer extend to where your new driveway is proposed?
it's a no disturb, you're
Tony, do you understand my question?
A little bit. The buffer for where the new driveway is gonna go, the uphill you're talking?
Yes, but if you look at a wetland, there's an edge of where it's wet, and then there's supposed to be a buffer depending on what type of soils are contained. Poorly drained soils get 50 feet, and very poorly drained soils get 75 feet. I don't see any indication of what soils, except it says poorly drained wetland. It doesn't say anything about soils,
right.
and that defines what the buffer needs to be.
Land.
All right, that's something that I'll have to speak with the surveyor. and-
Yeah, pass that along to your wetland scientist. And that might require that you reconfigure the driveway.
Gotcha.
So it depends on how you interpret that.
You might also ask this wetland scientist what the productivity level of this wetland is. That is a high-functioning wetland, or is it a minimal functioning wetland? Ideally,
Good
after
question.
restoration.
Sue, I just wanna confirm, so I'm just trying to, so are you saying that, cause I think it's a 50-foot buffer to the poorly drained. Are you saying that the driveway needs to be outside of that buffer, or you're saying it needs to be like a certain distance from the wetland?
Well, I thought that any structure, including a driveway, had to respect those type of buffers unless they got a permission for a waiver.
I don't think we've ever treated a driveway as a structure, because I think it's, well, I guess, let me pull up the definitions. It's been discussed, the reason
But an
I,
impact
I
would
think
be an
Dale
impact.
has,
he's interpreted that way?
right? We've had this discussion like recently, and that's what's you know, there's a few subdivisions. I feel like this is, we're actually dealing with driveways and impacts, and it's not only, the resource area, but then the buffer zones as well. If I'm not mistaken. I would jump in because I feel like we just had this conversation.
Well, that was my,
I know we've brought it up a number of times, but
Yeah.
it's the only thing I think we've
Sort
ever,
of related.
I've always interpreted as, vernal pools have a 25-foot no disturb vegetated buffer, but
Yeah, but anyway. But I have the lines on, I'm sorry.
yeah, I don't have the, any evidence.
so, here we go. This is why I remember reading this direction, this, definition. This is the definition of structure from the zoning ordinance. That which is built or constructed with a fixed location on the ground or attached to something having a fixed location on the ground, whether installed on, above, or below the surface of land. Fantastic definition, but, structures structure includes but is not limited to a building, barn, swimming pool, manufactured home, well, deck, porch, balcony, breezeway, carport, garage. So that's why we definitely don't allow septic systems or wells within that buffer. Structure shall not include boundary wall, fence, driveway, and in kind, a replacement septic system. So if there's already a pre-existing non-conforming, so that's why, so.
So
This is a question for
roads.
Dale, if he's treating driveways as a structure, it's not, per our zoning ordinance, it's not, so that's why technically, if it's not a vernal pool, you could put a driveway 2 feet from a wetland boundary, according to the regulation today. I agree that we've talked about a number of times of having some sort of
Well, we have.
setback for that purpose,
Yeah.
but that's another issue.
Yeah, roadway, different, 'cause
Yeah.
that's not.
I just
included.
wanna make sure there wasn't gonna be potentially another condition I'm not sure we can enforce.
Is there any further discussion from the board? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve case number 22-009-SCB with the following conditions. Our standard conditions as labeled in the staff report, fees, plan copies, necessary stamps and signatures, those will be provided as part of the notice of decision. Additionally, the wetland restoration must be completed per the NHDES approved restoration plan dated January 22nd, 2021. I'm gonna move this one. Outline, hatch, and label the wetland impact and restoration area, adding a plan note stating that the wetland restoration will be completed by July 1st, 2023, and prior to certificate of occupancy. Coordinate driveway permit with the DPW director to incorporate the October 11th comments, and the existing unpermitted driveway is to be abandoned. The proposed driveway with this new lot will run along the northern lot line of the new lot 4-1. And then on the plan, we request that the double lines labeled and shown as existing driveway be removed. A description of the road easement be provided to the Board of Selectmen for acceptance. And just to note that this approval pertains to a subdivision plan with an original date, I believe, of May 11th, 2022, and a revision date of 8/9/22.
Second.
And I will give this to you.
Do we wanna put a deadline on the condition, the approval condition, since we've got a deadline of July 1st, 2023? Shouldn't we have a deadline of this conditional approval?
So I think 12 months is in our subdivision regulations. If we
Right.
don't specify one. So we can make it less, we can make it more.
So right now, we have 12 months.
Yeah, but
The
he's,
general conditional approval.
right.
I would recommend November 1st, 2023.
That's,
Well, that's
November
more than,
1st.
that's more than a 12-month period.
November 1st, or you want to just date it on this day?
I'm thinking just date it July 1st, 2023, or July 2nd, 2023, since the,
Just reviewing some of the stuff, so
Because the certificate of occupancy has to come before, in order
right.
to have it on the same day. Yeah.
not opposed to it, just. Do you have a net timeline of when are you gonna build ASAP, or is that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it could be a question of the applicant, if 7 months or less than 12 months really is a problem anyway. Start building.
I can ask, sure. Do you foresee, with the conditions that were outlined tonight for possible approval? So oftentimes it's a year, but based on the date set for the DES side of it, they were saying that making the condition of approval all have to be met by July 1st of '23.
Sure.
You feel that's,
Absolutely.
so if
I mean,
you're-
besides some plan edits, it's really the easement language provided to the selectmen is the
Right.
only thing, and you'll get all this too, so. It seems all reasonable to be.
Because we
completed
just
by
can't
July.
accept land on behalf of the town, so, the
Right.
easement has to get accepted by the select board for the roadway there, the additional, but, so do you want to amend, or amend your endorsement?
I'll add, yeah, I'll add I guess I'll
Or add a condition to your,
add a condition to my motion that, this conditional approval be, through July 1st, 2023.
the deadline for all
Yeah.
conditions.
All right, so I'll amend to, deadline for all conditions of approval to be completed by July 1st, 2023.
I recognize that as a second.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. McKinnon, and a second by Mr. Anderson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? That motion carries 7-0. Thank you. So they'll have a notice of decision put up. It'll have all these conditions listed out. You'll have to get some of that to your surveyor to get onto the plans and, those edits made on there, and then get on the agenda for the select board for the, once you have your language for that easement in the town.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. The next case on the agenda is case number 22-011-SUB, application from Jones and Beach Engineering on behalf of Jim Rosborough, requesting an 11-lot subdivision, property located on Moores Road, Nottingham, New Hampshire, identified as tax map 72, lot 13-1. And this applicant has filed a conditional use permit. Some of that we'll get into, but the conditional use permit was filed in, butter notification was not in time to get out to abutters, and the conditional use permit substantially changes the scope of a application, so we'll have to address that after, but we'll, Mr. Guyer, if you'd like to
Yep,
introduce yourself, I know it's been a little while.
absolutely.
Chair, I have to recuse myself for this application as I have in the past.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. McKinnon has recused. I will seat Mr. Davies. Mr. Davies will be seated and voting and participating in this case, and Ms. Jones will still be participating as an alternate, but not voting. All right, Mr. Guyer, sorry. if you could-
Great, thank you. My name is Barry Guyer. I'm with Jones and Beach Engineers here for the applicant. At our last meeting with the board requested a couple of items that included the drainage calculations, review of the stream ordinance, to locate the proposed driveways on Johnson Trail, and to provide the documents for protecting the open space. We have provided the drainage calculations with the resubmittal package. The calcs show a need to upgrade the existing culvert under Moore's Road, actually two of the existing culverts under Moore's Road. So we're proposing in the updated plans show the replacement of the existing 24-inch culvert with the dual 2x2 box culvert and replace the existing 8-inch culvert with the 12-inch culvert. We've also added rain gardens to lots 1 through 5 and lot 10. In addition, we revised lot 9 to be further from the abutting lot. That's the one that was kind of placed behind the existing houses. We reviewed the project for the stream protection overlay. The existing stream is classified as intermittent, therefore does not qualify. Your regulations are first-order stream and higher. But that doesn't mean the stream isn't protected. It's actually in the wetland buffer or the wetland setback, so it is protected anyway. This would have just been another level if it had complied with the stream protection overlay. We have updated the wetland setbacks as required, and those are shown on the resubmitted plan. Open space calculations have been reviewed and updated as required. We do have sufficient buildable area as required. We're scheduled to be in front of the Raymond Planning Board on November 3rd, so we'll have more information after that meeting regarding the access on Moores and Jomsa. We did attend the Conservation Commission on October 17th. We have incorporated their comments into the plans and the covenants. I think the board endorsed it with just a couple of items. As the chair said, we have submitted 3 conditional use permits. We kind of talked about these at the original submittal, but the first one was for the removal of the 100-foot landscape buffer requirement for the open space subdivision. The second was for the wetland impact associated with the culvert replacement. And the third one was to allow lots greater than allowed in the open space subdivision. We also have requested a waiver to Article 11, Section 8 to allow rear property corners to be marked with iron pins in lieu of the granite bounds. We have completed the New Hampshire NHB review. Blanding Turtle was our only hit. I know that wasn't in your package, but I do have a copy of it, and I can give that to Kevin. We also submitted the open space document, or the open space documents under the covenants and restrictions. So that should be in your package. We're proposing to have the open space to be held by the homeowners. We're not proposing to have a homeowners association. The covenants and restrictions actually does the same thing as the homeowners association, where each of the homeowners owns 1/11 of the open space. It just kind of cuts out all the HOA requirements because there is no other requirement on this site for an HOA. We don't have a shared road. We don't have shared easements. It's just the open space. So that kind of cleans it up, but provides the protection for the open space. We have received the updated staff comments from our Rockingham Planning Commission, right? Is it all right? Sorry, I missed that.
I'm Stratford.
Yes, and I believe the majority of the items have been addressed. But with that, take any questions the board has.
All right, thank you so much.
So going back to the conditional use permits, we did resubmit those on, I think, Thursday, maybe Friday. I know it's not time to get the actual butter notices out. If the board wants to discuss it, I know we can't vote on it tonight, but we'd be happy to answer or discuss any of those items.
All right, thank you. Mr. Haney, did you want to go over, you had a few comments, I believe, based on the revised plans?
I did. There's nothing of serious implication here. You know, I had some summary, as what Barry just did. I noted the CUPs and the notification, and then at the bottom, it does appear that they've addressed, the new plans have addressed comments from above. I did make note that the revised lots 8 and 9 have moved the proposed houses further from the existing home. And then, they submitted a cistern plan in their, construction details, so that, it's probably something that should be reviewed by the fire department. I would think you could probably do that as a condition, but that's your decision. And then, he did mention, the town of Raymond's planning board status. You know, if there's, the board may want to tease that out and try and get a little more clarity on that, if there's more to be, noted there, but that was to the extent of it.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion from the board?
Have we received the conditional use documents?
They're in our packet tonight. I have copies.
I have them in my-
Do you have this packet? That was-
Yeah, we have a cover letter. It's dated, the 20th of October, and it says conditional use permit. It has all three of them.
So one question, I guess, before we get into that. So where was it, so you mentioned that this isn't a first order stream, that it's a, intermittent. So who made that determination? Is that the wetland scientist or?
Yes, the wetland scientist, Jamie Long.
So I think, once I saw that on the revised plans, I did reach out to our building inspector just to give him a heads up. Because in our zoning, anytime there's a conflict between like our maps and what an application side is, the authority on it falls to the building inspector and DES. So I've requested, I advised him that through discussion tonight, it's likely that a request is gonna come to them saying, please determine.
Sure.
You know, because one way it triggers this, one way it doesn't, so.
Is it shown on a town map as being first order?
The wetlands, I'm sorry, the water inventory map shows it as a stream, which is a solid line. So I don't think we have any maps that list, that show everything as first order, second order, third order, fourth order. That would be a great map.
I think that
Actually,
you,
we do have, it's the surface water resources map. that
Yeah.
SRPC
That's,
did.
that's one I thought I looked at, that
Yeah.
showed it as a stream,
It showed it as a first order,
right?
at least color-wise.
Oh, the green, yeah, so the green did show it that, okay. That's the one I was looking at. So I can formalize that, like I said, I saw it on there, I figured that was gonna come up. We'd already accepted the application, so, just to try to get that process moving, I had sent a request to Dale Sylvia, the building inspector, to, that this is likely to fall in his lap for comment.
yeah, and as I said, it doesn't really matter to the project because it's protected on either side by the wetland buffer anyway.
Okay. So one question, the proposed 4K areas in some of the open space lots, they seem pretty close to the lot lines. Do you know, are those?
It's a 10-foot setback, so we made sure that they're all within the required setback.
So 10 foot being the state required. but-
Correct.
I'm trying to see where that is in our open space. I see their setbacks for all their other lots being 20 feet. And those all have test pits, 2 test pits in each?
I believe that is the case.
My guess is the first ones did, and then, but if you revised, you know, a couple of lots on JAMSA, and then lot 9 would be the ones that would be, they're in for test pits.
Yeah, fortunately, we had lot 9 close to where we revised the building to, so it didn't really impact that. We had originally, there was another lot on that side, so those are the ones that we're not using, 22 and I think it's 3B.
So I didn't see the grading and drainage plan. Was that available to us?
So, they're actually, I apologize, the C3s are the grading and drainage plans. The only construction that we're proposing is for the the cistern and the culverts. So there's not a lot of grading and drainage going on. But if you look at C3, it's an overall grading and drainage plan. And then C3A and C3B, they show a typical lot grading with the rain garden, as well as silt fence for the house and the driveways.
So there's no impact on the roadways per se. That's what I was kind of looking at, as far as drainage.
Correct, yeah, we're changing the culverts, because they're undersized currently.
Right.
And we're putting in the rain gardens, which will allow it to infiltrate some of that water from the driveways and the house and
Before it gets.
before it gets to the road.
Thank you.
And then on proposed lot 8, you kind of show two separate building envelope, or not building envelopes, I apologize.
So, yeah, that one,
Like an alternative.
yeah, I showed two, and I know that was gonna be a question, because we marked it as a optional building location. I didn't wanna restrict that, because there may be a homeowner that wants to overlook the beaver pond, and there may be one that wants to, is on the road, so I didn't wanna restrict them. I wanted to show you, the board, that they have both options.
And access to the back part there would be able to exist with that 4K area,
Correct.
and having a driveway would likely have to go over it.
Yeah, and obviously the 4K area isn't where the septic has to go. They could
Right.
dig new test pits and put it in a different location.
Put it where the front possible house lot
Correct.
would be. And I believe we did send out the language to legal, to council for the covenants, is that correct on this one? And I believe there's some questions that came back, did those all get?
She replied, I believe you're on that email, I didn't look at it yet, but she replied with some edits.
Okay,
I believe you can.
yeah, okay, so I didn't know if they made that back to the applicant with the questions or not. So it might be some just additional edits that came from council on those.
Absolutely.
And then, again, so who is proposed to hold the easement on the,
So the homeowners will have it within their covenants, that if you look at the covenants and restrictions, it limits what can be done on the open space in perpetuity. So it goes with the lots, so it's part of their deed. So each homeowner owns a 1/11th piece of it, not a physical, here's 1/11th of that property, but 1/11th interest in the open space. So it basically is the exact same thing as a homeowners association, just that the tax bill goes to 11 people instead of the homeowners association, and they don't have to have a yearly meeting.
okay,
In this case, because there's nothing else that the homeowners association would do, typically they would have responsibility for maintaining the road or something of that nature, or, a playground or whatever. In this case, there is nothing. It's the open space is to be utilized for the homeowners, and other than that, it's just gonna be left alone in perpetuity.
How do decisions get made?
They still can meet. I mean, what decisions are you gonna make regarding it? They can't, in the covenants, it does have the ability to meet and to change the covenants if you want to change, like, the restrictions. That has to go through the town as well, to the planning board. But there is the ability, and I'm not a lawyer, so I didn't write this up, but my reading of it and my understanding is that they have the ability to make changes if there was changes. But this is gonna be left alone in perpetuity, so
If it's tied to their deeds though, does that mean that then they need 100% of a vote or something?
I believe it says 2/3 or something like that of the vote. And I'm sure the legal would go through that, but I believe that's what it
With
is.
7 of something, I remember reading that.
Yeah, I read it quickly and, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but yeah, by a 2/3 vote.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know if that's in the covenants, you know, so normally, not, on most of these that we've seen, a lot of times it's an easement granted to, in the past, some of them was to the town, the development easement, and others to, you know, local land trusts, and then, so there's a monitoring side of things where, you know, so I don't know if that was built into those covenants, is to monitoring, and then what steps are taken for if, you know, violations are found.
Yeah, that I'd have to look into. I don't know that there is a monitoring, but the open space subdivision does provide for a homeowners association to hold it. This is basically the same thing, and actually, the lawyer indicated that the regulations kind of contradict themselves, because they say a homeowners association should own it, but then they also say that it has, the rights to the lots have to be conveyed with the deed, which would be on a per lot basis, which is we're doing it as basically per the deed on a per lot basis and not a homeowners association. So his take on it was you can do either one, but that is an allowable person to hold the easement, is the homeowners association. Now, I'd have to review the open space regulation to say if there's anybody that has to monitor it. I mean, I understand if the town or conservation, if they held it, obviously they'd want to monitor it. Or if CELT held it, they'd want to monitor it, but this is a little bit different.
Yeah, I'm reading protection and management, open space, shall be protected and managed by one or more of the following methods subject to planning board approval. So one of those is, E, deed restrictions and or conservation easement documents shall be placed on file with town clerk upon receipt of the planning board subdivision approval and duly recorded at the county registry of deeds. So I think that's, when you mentioned covenants and such, I believe that's what you're falling to E.
Correct.
Okay.
Is that something that legal should look into? That covenants would work
be
in this
sufficient.
case?
Yep.
Mr. Guyer, I have a couple of questions. The people who live on Moores Road and on Jamsa have enjoyed walking the path through the woods and looking at the wetlands and for decades. Will their access now be restricted by new residents?
Yes, to some degree. I would say yes. This is a private homeowner, private landowner. And the new landowners have the right to decide who accesses their property. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna say that the open space is going to be for the use of the landowners that are purchasing a lot there. Now, are they gonna call the police if somebody's walking the trails? This is Nottingham, that doesn't normally happen. But, a new homeowner, they may not want people walking through their backyard, and I can't blame them. So, I would say that it's most likely going to be restricted.
So for the open space that's protected, if one landowner says no, does that mean that all of that open space is?
The easement that were written, the covenants and deeds that were written preclude other people from accessing the property. So it's for the homeowners that are purchasing a lot.
I see. And I had another point that when we met with you at the Conservation Commission meeting on October 17th, we sent along a letter to the select board, to the planning board about our review and discussion, and a couple of items were suggested that they be written into the covenants. And I just want to make this public, that the covenants note that wetland buffers are to be respected, particularly for lots 2, 3, and 4, that where their lines just extend right into the wetland itself. To provide unimpeded access for wildlife, so no fences or barriers that would stop not only the big critters, but the small ones, like amphibians and turtles, landings. And thirdly, to restrict chemical use, pesticides and fertilizers that would go into the watershed and degrade it.
We actually included language in the covenants and restrictions to try to minimize the use of herbicides and pesticides. I meant to have it, the wetland buffer information you indicated, included. It didn't get included yet, but we will update it for that.
Thank you. And also, what have been your discussions with the town of Raymond? Are they okay with increased traffic on Mountain Road?
We're meeting with them on Thursday.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Next Thursday, right?
Yeah, the
Week from Thursday. Yep.
3rd or 4th, I think it is.
Any other discussion from the board? We can, it is a public hearing, so obviously the case will have to be continued, so we have to get that Raymond input first, and then we have to make sure there was a time for the abutter notification for the conditional use permit. We can have a discussion on some of those, so I'll mention what they are, and then I'll open the public hearing. So we had 3 conditional use permits applied for. One was the wetland buffer impact of 2,858 square feet for construction of a shared driveway, which I believe is lots, between lots 6 and 7. And culvert replacement, and the culvert replacement is between lots 7 and 8 in that section.
Correct.
Wetland impact of 83 square feet for culvert replacement on Moore's Road. So the direct impact to wetland is 83 square feet, and that's specifically to address the undersized culvert, is my understanding. Correct. Which is also working with the town road agent's request regarding the roadway. So that's one conditional use permit. The second one was open space for a conditional use permit requesting open space lots that are greater than the max at 45,000 square feet. And the third, and there's language regarding these as to why, did I miss one? Or is it the 2 are combined for the wetland and the?
No, the third one's for the 100-foot landscape buffer required by the open space
Oh, here it
regulation.
is, sorry, I flipped past it. Elimination of the 100-foot landscape buffer, so, and like I said, we can discuss some of those, we just can't act on them tonight, to allow for that abutter notification to go out. But, at this point, though, I'll reopen the public hearing. If anybody would like to speak to, for, or against, the case, please come on up. Again, there will be no final action on this application tonight, so it's gonna be continued, but we can hear additional comment in case there's plan revisions that are needed. You can just,
Well, so lot 9 is staying where it is?
and,
I can't see that at all, I'm sorry.
sure, yeah, and if you could
That's
just.
behind, I'm sorry, my name's Craig Porter at 18 Moores Road. Lot 9, I believe, is the lot right behind me. Yeah. And that's not only staying, but now they've actually put in another one here. This is gonna put, you know my concerns on this. I mean, first of all, just the value of my house is gonna drop, mine and my neighbors. Plus the water, the concerns with everything. I've given you my concerns. But one I didn't say was the driveways. These driveways are gonna have to be about 300 feet long to 400. We average, I guess, I don't know, 75. And if you allow these, if they put these over on JAMSA, you might have a normal driveway. Now, on top of that, they've moved the house lot back, which I appreciate. They did that for me so that the well wouldn't run through me so much. But by moving it back, they've put it in the middle of the woods. So they're bringing a greater impact on the nature of the nature around it, the conservation area. It's a much greater impact than having the house on Jamsa 100 feet off the road. You know, this house is gonna be, what, 400 or 500 feet into the woods? It's gonna be in the middle of the woods. Kind of ruins the whole idea of keeping that land. You know, you're putting something right in the center of it. I don't have to say it again, you understand, it does ruin the whole idea of that whole thing. Sorry, I'm not a little more prepared, but, and now I see that there's gonna be 2 driveways going that way, and it's gonna be a shared driveway, is that right? So it's gonna be double wide? And that's going right between me and the wetlands.
Are you looking at proposed lots 8 and 9?
Yeah,
So no, those are individual driveways. The first one for proposed lot 8 is short. If the house lot is built at the front, it'd be a short driveway. If it's built to the back, it would obviously have to be a longer, a much longer
Yeah.
driveway.
and being built to the back, they're both being put right in the middle of the woods, kinda destroying the whole conservation area. Where if they're put over on Jamsa, it appears to me that, I mean, I'm not sure how they can do it. It appears they would fit over there without the great impact that they have now. And if they did move them, I would ask the town maybe say, you don't have to do the cistern, do the sprinkler systems instead. Just because they did the neighborly thing and moved the house.
Yeah, with open space, it's a balance, when you're looking at plans. The goal generally is to retain as much of the open space as contiguous area as possible. I'm not certain that an additional lot could go on to Jamsa. The other concern probably with that would be, the condition of that road being much less, so than Moore's Road.
Yeah.
So there would potentially be additional upgrades and such needed, which would have potentially additional impact to that side. We do allow in our regulations, for wells to, in an open space subdivision, to extend off the property boundary into the open space area, the well radius that is, not the well itself, but the well radius. So that's what you're seeing, there. That doesn't necessarily mean that's where the well is going to go, but they do have to show that that the lot could satisfy both the septic system and house and well.
Well, addressing what you just said, an open area where you try not to have any interruption in it. This lot 9, especially now that they've moved the house back, not that I want them to move the house back to close to my lot line, but now that they've moved the house back, it's interrupting that area, that whole conservation area.
Right, yep, and again, I think the revision was, it's trying to address some of the, the abutter concerns and some of the things that we had voiced, and find that, again, balance of what remains, so potentially allowing some vegetated area between existing house lots and new house lots, and minimizing, impact to abutters.
Well, like I said, I appreciate that they did that, but by doing it, they are now interrupting the conservation area in the rear. But that's basically all I had to say was, I would just like you to really take a good hard look at that lot back there. Is it worth a couple of us losing at least 10 to 20 grand on our houses? On top of the fact that you got 300-foot driveways instead of where maybe you could put 100 if you can switch somewhere else where you can put this house. I noticed from looking at this plan that I keep saying Jamsa, but I notice it does look like there's a wetlands over on Jamsa too, so. But like I said, I'm just asking you to really give this consideration.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mike Heyer, I'm in the butter. I just have some questions here. Are there weight limits to the culverts they're putting in?
Weight limits as in the culvert itself or to the
No,
to
it's to the
restrictions for
road, the cars driving over the culverts.
that would be something that would be coordinated with our town road agent.
Okay, what's a rain garden?
Ms. Money would like to field that one.
Answer it if you like.
Well, in general, it's a pool, it's constructed, grassed, and water is directed into that, say from an impervious surface like a roof or a driveway, and it goes in there as, at a modest flow, so it can percolate into the groundwater. And therefore, it does not go into a wetland directly or into the roadway directly.
Okay.
They've been around for quite a number of years.
I just had never heard of one, but the drainage on Moores right now, I mean, there have been, the tubes that have been put underneath the road for drainage, especially up where these newer 8 lots are gonna be, and they don't work.
No, this is
Right,
a
they're
much better
undersized.
approach, because it doesn't even get to the road.
Okay, that sounds positive. Open space is for the homeowners. Can they put a basketball court in there?
No,
No tennis courts, no playgrounds?
can't build anything in there.
Okay, that's what I thought, but when this gentleman was saying that the open space belongs to the homeowners, so that we can't walk through anymore, or maybe not be able to walk, which I kind of understand that. As you all noticed, I assume on the walkthrough, the Raymond end of Moores Road is in terrible condition. And that's gonna feed the whole thing, and we're adding 20 more cars to Moores Road. I'm really concerned about that. They've just regraded the road, and there's already holes in it now with the people who live there now, without adding 20 more cars.
Yeah, so the applicant is meeting, as part of this, is gonna be before the Nottingham, the
Yes.
Raymond Planning Board next
On
Thursday.
The 3rd, yeah, I just heard that.
Regarding specifically regarding access that originates outside of Nottingham, so both Moores Road and Jamsa, will have to be addressed, so
Okay.
that town may add conditions or things that they require.
Okay, because I had noticed that we hadn't heard anything back from Raymond. Did the Lamprey River Association ever get back to us?
No, not on this one. No. Thought we had received,
Does that have to be done before things can go forward as well, I would assume?
I will have to double check. That was part of our so, yeah, so there's nothing else triggering the Lamprey River Advisory Committee, comment in my remembrance of this, other than when we designated a development of regional impact, we had requested that they be notified as well to allow them to have time for comment.
Right, and somebody was there at the walkthrough, I remember from Raymond, who was saying that they hadn't been notified, so, okay. All right, glad to hear those things are being considered.
So we may not get comment from Lamprey River Advisory Committee, but if they do submit comment, it'll become part of the record, and we'll address it.
Okay. There have been some concerns from people in our neighborhood that Mr. Moran is a personal friend of Mr. Rossborough and maybe should be recusing himself from these deliberations as well.
Sure. I'll, Mr. Moran, do you want to address that, or do you want me to speak towards it, or?
No, I'll speak to it. I live on Pawtucket Lake. I'm friends with a lot of people on Pawtucket Lake. All around. I'm also one of the selectmen. So decisions I make affect everybody, on the lake and not on the lake. Me and Mr. Rossborough's relationship, I haven't been over to his house in 5 or 6 years. I've seen him twice all summer, and that's due to a mutual party that we were at of mutual friends. No greater than anybody else in this room if I see them somewhere else, at something else, at a lake association meeting or anything like that. So, I understand, but again, I'm doing what's best interest for the town. And again, I only have one vote on this board, so I'm not gonna really change the whole dynamic here anyways. So, I don't feel that myself is necessary for recusal because I don't think my relationship is not in any way impacting my decision here because I just know somebody. Because I know a lot of people. So if you feel that way, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I don't believe I have a relationship that would warrant me to sway my decision on how I feel about this development.
It's not just me, John.
No, I'm saying, I'm speaking in general to everybody. I'm not just giving you my opinion on why I'm still sitting here. And I don't feel the need for myself to recuse myself. This is not a family member. This is not somebody that was at their wedding. This is not somebody that, I mean, I see every weekend or have a close relationship with. If that was the case, I probably would recuse myself.
No financial.
But Jim Rossborough, to me, is just an acquaintance on Pawtuckaway Lake.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. And recusal is always a personal choice, and we have it in our bylaws. So generally, the things that really push for recusal is if you have a direct financial interest in the case, you should definitely recuse. If you're a direct abutter, it's suggested that you recuse. But again, especially in small towns, it's so I appreciate the question, the concern. I'm glad it was voiced and glad it was resolved. But in small towns, the overlap is very common, especially or with local businesses as well. It's something that NHMA and which New Hampshire Municipal Association I've read up on in the past. If we have an applicant coming before us that potentially is a business owner and we use that business at times, does that make us recuse? No, that doesn't either, unless there's a direct benefit. So again, I appreciate the question and I'm glad it was voiced and resolved. So thank you.
Good evening, Heather Iworski, 104 Mountain Road, Nottingham. Just wanted to remind everyone of our master plan and our ordinance, our spirit. The whole point of this, and hopefully you all take this with your vote, is to maintain a natural resource, tree-lined scenic roads, keep them nice. I know Mountain Road is actually a conserved road. I don't know if it's a scenic road, but we should be careful on what we build around that. Another goal is, for our vision, is unfragmented forests. And our guiding goals is to really protect Nottingham's natural environment by well-managed growth. Well-managed growth. Protecting the environment that directs development away from sensitive areas. That is in the master plan. I didn't write that. You guys all wrote that. We all voted on it. The town, it's in there. So this is why this development is a concern, because it's in a sensitive area. It is not off Route 4, this busy paved road. It's not off, someplace that's already high developed or with circles where all these like little McMansions live. This is not that neighborhood. This is a sensitive area, and everyone who lives there because of that. The other thing for the master plan and our spirit and our ordinance is to keep our taxes low so our elderly, can stay in their homes and people can live here year after year and have generational, families and growth. But how, I'm just wondering, I think we'll know more after the road agent gets back. Now that these are public roads and we need all of this new maintenance from all this new construction coming in, who covers those costs, and does that raise our taxes? Because if that raises our taxes, that's a whole nother meeting right there. That completely goes against our spirit of our ordinance of any kind of master plan when thinking about anything like this. Follow up from the last meeting, it was brought up, we haven't heard from LRAC, Lamprey River Advisory Committee. I would be very interested to hear what they have to say. If not them, definitely a DES review. I haven't seen, that review, or I'm not sure at one point that permit is applied for, if it's a condition, but I would like to know more about that. I did check all the maps online, and there is definitely that solid stream that runs directly through that property. So I would like to challenge that map and get, figure out what the wetland scientist found and compare it to the maps that we use day to day in our building code and zoning. The wetland study, vernal pools, I definitely saw on the plans, there were vernal pools noted, there were the wetlands buffers noted. Just want to make sure that 25-foot no disturb vegetation buffer is definitely in there, and it's not going to be impacted in any driveway, any building. If a vernal pool overlaps into a lot, I'm not sure. I haven't had a chance to really dig too deep because these were just posted. I'm sure none of you had to. It's impossible to dig through all of this that deep. I know because I look at these every day. The wildlife study from the Heritage Commission or committee. So New Hampshire Granite has a wildlife action plan, and the town of Nottingham and a lot of regional planning committees, they use New Hampshire Granite, and those kind of overlap with a lot of the national wetlands inventory maps and so forth. So they're pretty accurate maps. The wildlife action plan is one of those maps, and that is a blueprint to conserve species. In this area, it actually is a very high impact from their recent 2020 map. So this is why we request a wildlife study. This is why, it's brought up, because it actually is on that map. Somebody figured that out at some point. The Conservation Commission meetings weren't posted, so I'd be very interested in seeing those. So thank you, Susan, for giving us feedback on what was discussed. I know this is going to be continued, so hopefully they'll be uploaded by then. The road agent, again, that's going to be more follow-up, so I'd be interested to see in writing what that plan is, what the cost is, what the taxpayer cost would be. Cistern location, review that. Is it near that intermittent stream? Because that stream is definitely on that map. Let's see. Site plan review regulations. So I read through it again and again. And part of that application, which they did complete, they did not include impact statements for environment, pollution control, drainage, like there was no traffic, noise. So section 5 of the subdivision app, they only provided 1 and 2 of like the 7 little check boxes. The rest weren't waived. They weren't not applicable, they were just blank. So I'm wondering why. Why aren't there not impact studies? That doesn't seem fair. I know you have the right to waive that, but there wasn't a formal waiving that I've seen anywhere. There are unfragmented forests and land, like I did mention before, but that is part of that whole impact statement and that whole impact study. Same with the hydrogeological study, same with like everything we've been talking about. That is written in that zoning ordinance. That is written in the site plan review kind of steps in how to. Pollution control is another thing. There should be no septic within 75 horizontal feet from water, wetland, intermittent streams, or seasonably wet soil. So we know where the wetlands are, we know where the water is, we kind of know where the intermittent stream is, but we don't know where that seasonably wet soil is because it's not really well noted on the map. So we should probably check that. And back to the abutters can challenge the soil classification, they can challenge any of the maps. So until we kind of see them, I'm interested to see kind of what is really being impacted. Rain gardens, I definitely know where to rain garden in. I've built them, I support them. However, there is an algorithm, there's math to a rain garden. Rain gardens work depending on the square foot of, say, your roof or your driveway or your runoff. What is the driveway going to be made out of? How big are these roofs? I know from looking at kind of the sample plot plan, one of these properties, is like 70,000 square feet or whatever, like lot, and the other one's maybe half that. Those rain gardens are going to look very different from one another. So really depending on what is built there, that is going to depend on where that rain garden goes, what it should be made out of. And I highly recommend SOAK in New Hampshire, SOAK, and they're great resources and nonprofit to provide feedback on that. Back to, so water reserves, we talked about this, and drought, just bringing it up again. I looked at some other maps that Nottingham has on file. Route 4, Mill Pond Road, and 152 near McCrillis. Those seem to be the areas where there's like better water reserves. Here, not so much. And we're looking to add 11 more wells. We're already in a drought, people. So there's other places to build in Nottingham that are probably great. This is just not a great place. And then lastly, I mean, take out some lots, or, you know, let's come up with a solution. I know, you know, it's not my land, it's someone else's land. They want to sell and move on, great. Sell it to a conservation. There's money, SELT has money. There's so many nonprofits around here and so many businesses who would raise the money to buy that land and reimburse the landowner so he can just wash his hands and go, and then it's forever conserved. So I just want to open that possibility. That's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Some of that, there's a lot of items there. The cistern location sometimes is determined in conjunction with road agent, and then the fire chief generally has a voice as to where those go. And then road improvements associated with this development, the road agent had comments, and there may be things that are required of the applicant to the road. For example, that culvert that we were talking about, that's at the applicant's expense, not the town's expense for that one.
For which culvert?
The one on Moore's Road, that's, I say between lots 7 and 8. Sheet C3 shows it, proposed box culvert number 1. So some of those improvements would be at the expense of the applicant, not at the expense of the town.
Except for Jambo Trail.
And then I believe one of the maps you mentioned for the for water resources, maybe you may be been looking at the aquifer protection districts. So that's an area where the town has restricted subdivisions to require even larger lots to propose, because those may be an area that municipal wells in the future could go if they were ever needed.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that last part?
Oh, I believe the map, one of the maps that was being mentioned is specifically the Aquifer Protection District. So that shows areas in town with stratified drift aquifers, I believe, but where aquifers are most likely located and would be the best locations for potentially like a municipal well, if one were to ever go in.
So she was just mentioning that rain gardens, plural, but I was under the impression there was only one going in.
No, look in that sheet
So
C.
there's gonna be several?
Yeah.
One with each home?
C3A is the easiest one to see it. Any of those oval sections are proposed rain gardens, so it looks like pretty much every lot, except for 6 and 7.
So lots 1 through 4 and lots 10, or lot 10.
Okay, yeah.
Or 1 through 5 and lot
5 and 10.
So where we could reasonably anticipate that we could fit them, we put them.
I apologize. Was there any other public comment tonight? Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing. All right, Mr. Geiger. So I guess one of those questions was the sizing of rain gardens. Is there any calculation that was put into these, or is it, was it based, are these kind of
Just on a
proposed areas
typical
for them?
house and typical lot, because, you know, we're not restricting the size of the house they can put on there, nor are we, you know, specifying the length of the driveway they have to install. These are all, I mean, this is for a subdivision. So the house could go up in the front and the septic in the back. Right now, we're showing along Moore's Road especially, the house in the back and the septic system in the front. But we don't want to dictate, you know, well, except for like lot 7, where you have restrictions where they could, you know, can build their house. So we show a typical, I think,
C3A shows that, yeah,
yeah.
in E1.
that
Heat
gives them an
winches
idea
design.
of what they can do, and we can also point to, you know, the pamphlets put out by DES regarding that for the sizing of it as well.
Okay. And I guess one of the questions, and I kind of been looking at lots 8 and 9, proposed lots 8 to 9. So if the house lot for lot 8 was at the front, I think this configuration makes sense. But if the house were to be built towards the back, I would rather, again, because of the nature of this and the length of those driveways and where they are, I would prefer to see a shared driveway in that situation. It seems like the perfect example for one, where it could go right up the lot line and then bridge off to potentially where the house lots are.
Except if you owned lots 8 and 9. So we always try to prevent shared driveways because there's just a problem with depending on who has to maintain it, who's gonna pay for the plowing, you know, it's never a good thing. And you wanna see property value decrease, have a shared driveway, because you're gonna fight with your neighbor no matter if you like them or not. So we would prefer not to have shared driveways. I would, if I could get away with lots 6 and 7 not having a shared driveway, we wouldn't have a shared driveway, just because it never works out, and the town and the building inspector will have calls regarding who's supposed to maintain my driveway, why, you know. So it's better off to have individual driveways.
But don't you have in the covenants that you put together something in relation to the lots 6 and 7?
Lots 6 and
what
7.
they should do, so couldn't you just do the same thing for those lots?
We could, but again, we would prefer not to. I mean, unless it's directed by the board, I guess I would say that the applicant would prefer not to have shared driveways.
Would we have permission to do that? Be allowed to tell them what to do?
It's in our purview, especially the open space subdivision. Reduce lots, in any application, we can reduce lots, required different configuration. Shared driveways can be, I mean, I understand the applicant's concern, but again, where there are, you know, significant wetlands and such in these areas, and the lots are oversized as is, from our open space plan, which is what we have a conditional use permit request for. So,
Mr. Beal, may I say something?
of course.
Listening to people come up from, on this project who live in the area, being concerned about houses being built behind them, lots 8 and 9, interfering and going right into the open space. A thought crossed my mind. Why not combine lots 8 and 9 and build a duplex in the front? Therefore, you get your 2 residences, they have a short driveway, and those houses aren't looming in the back and penetrating the open space.
Well, again, that's not a proposal. We're proposing 11 single-family residential lots.
I understand.
So the applicant is in front of you for 11 single-family open space lots, I guess. That would not be a preference. Obviously, you're not gonna get as much, they're not as worth as much as, you know, a duplex.
Well, I'm
Obviously, it's not all about the money, but there is,
but it is.
this person owns the property. He has the right to do with the property what the zoning allows.
That is
And
correct.
his proposal is for 11 single-family lots.
So in regards to conservation, that needs to be a little bit more consideration, I think, for the conservation values.
I
area.
disagree. We're providing more than the required open space and more than the required buildable open space. I mean, the board has, I appreciate that the abutters would prefer that this stay open and never developed, but they don't own the property. the property owner is a taxpayer just like everybody else in this town. So they have the right to do what is allowed per the regulations on their lot. That's what he's proposing, and we meet all the requirements for open space, for conservation. We are doing exactly what the open space proposes, which is protecting the vital environmentally sensitive areas. We have one wetland buffer impact, or one wetland impact of 87 square feet for the replacement of an undersized culvert. We have one buffer, wetland setback impact for a shared driveway. We just saw a project that had a 2-lot subdivision where they had already impacted a wetland, and we're gonna be in the wetland buffer, or wetland setback, for the driveway. I mean, you're getting 11 for less than that, in my opinion, for an environmentally sensitive area.
I think, may I? Can you walk me through the need, the request for the conditional use permit for open space?
Can we speak to that, considering the fact that the abutters weren't?
I think we can talk a little bit about it, but
I'm sorry, yeah, I thought we were.
well, we can reiterate it. We're not gonna act on it tonight. I think if it's,
I just want to make sure we're.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm happy to hold off.
yeah, I think it's kind of like when we have a development of regional impact and we've had additional discussion, I think it helps guide potential further discussion or revisions, before that hearing occurs. So,
Sue, can I ask you a question? The meeting with the Conservation Commission, I know I recall, and I think it's noted in minutes, that during, I think, either the conceptual or the design review, we talked about an environmental impact assessment. Was that brought up in the Conservation Commission meeting at all, about requiring an environmental impact assessment, given?
Well, we had asked for a Natural Heritage Bureau
What's the
assessment.
difference between that and?
That's usually the go-to agency.
So the
And they-
NHB will review for endangered species of all kinds, endangered, threatened, or there's
Of
one other term.
interest, of interest.
Right. So they look at all the hits, like if any of those things are found on the property or have been found in the area. The only hit we had was the Blandings turtle, which is very typical for this part of New Hampshire.
But to your question, Charlene, New Hampshire Heritage Bureau works hand in hand with New Hampshire Fish and Game, and they are the ones who did the action plan. So there's correspondence there.
And the Conservation Commission had asked that in this covenant document that there be reference to in protection of the buffer zone, right? You had said, you had read it, but.
Let me see. There'd be language added to the HOA to respect wetland buffers, to provide unimpeded access for wildlife, and to restrict chemical use.
So, I mean,
And that the board recommended an assessment from the Natural Heritage Bureau and Fish and Game from the applicant.
yeah, and I think.
Which is
yeah,
here.
Thanks. And I think the other thing about this is it's 11 houses in a very, kind of tight space in an area in which we have heard from abutters about impact to wells. I think there was especially one abutter I can remember who had a seasonal property there and concerns about that well. And we also had talked about maybe doing a hydrological study, which I think that was also just brought up by one of the abutters too, given the drought. And I just wonder if we should do that. We've talked about the fact that we continuously have these developments coming in, and we're not studying the water, and at some point in time, we need to start to do those studies. because people's wells are going dry in Nottingham. And, you know, drought is, we're seeing it more and more and more. We're living in drought situations, so I just wonder at what point in time do we start to require that of applicants? And these houses are pretty close together, and I just wonder if we should be, and this is just to the group, should we require a study to see what the impact is with 11 more houses in this area to those abutters?
So, from the standpoint of the applicant, these houses are close together because it's an open space subdivision. The yield plan yields 11 lots under your base zoning. So your base zoning is, most towns are based upon what they believe that a single-family lot, what size a single-family lot needs to be in order to provide septic and the well, the amount of water. So we're not overdeveloping this based upon our yield plan. If you decide, if you ask for a hydrogeological or whatever study, you have to look for, you're asking a question. What question are you asking? Can this or can this not support 11 houses? Well, your underlying zoning says it is. So if it doesn't, or if the board decides it doesn't, is that a taking? Because we say that your underlying zoning has 11 lots. If the board says, we think it only can take 8, is that a taking? That's a question to the board. I mean, you have regulations in place. We following the regulations. Now, I know a lot of the, I mean, if you just look at the map, we're not any smaller than, we're actually quite a bit larger than most of the lots in our vicinity.
Yeah. You know, go ahead. I was just gonna say, I'm gonna try and remain calm, to the comment of the taking, because, I could speak to that for a lot of different reasons, so just remain calm.
Well, one of
If I could
the,
ask a question here. One of the, I was gonna get to this earlier, which is, could you walk me through the reason for the request for the larger lot sizes in the conditional use permit application?
Yeah, so specifically for lots 8, 9, 6, 7, 8, and 9, we're trying to get past the wetland buffer area so we don't have additional impact. That's specifically why we need to have, you know, to get to where we have the developable areas.
So if you weren't granted that one, what would be the resolution?
I'd have to relook at it. I'm not saying that, well, that we couldn't meet that. Most of the lots do, and I think that we could make it work.
Okay. So it's not financial, is what you're saying?
No, I wouldn't say that request is financial.
Okay.
So my reading of the open space regulations, and if you look at those two items in particular, it's really anticipating where we install a road to access these lots. That's why you have the 100-foot buffer, because you want those houses off of the road to start, you know, when you build your road in, you get 100 feet before you start putting the houses in. And then they're basically, you know, more of a cookie cutter and more close together. This is a road frontage subdivision, which we are able to do an open space to protect this area. So it's a little bit different than my reading of your open space kind of anticipates.
And the language here is granting this CUP will allow access to upland areas. So it reads to me that the reason for is to be granted opportunity to build in areas that might not otherwise be buildable. It reads as a financial reasoning. So that's why I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying what appears to be in here for your client's justification is that it appears to be that we need this to gain access to buildable area, and without it, we might not be able to. So, you know, I guess I just want to know that, you know, I would love, you know, I think there should be a stronger argument that that isn't the case.
Well, I think if you read through the open space subdivision regulations, it basically gives the board extreme flexibility in the shape and sizing of the lots. And which is one of the reasons you have that availability in the CUP, is because not every lot is unencumbered in some form or fashion. This has wetlands along the frontage. Instead of building a road through the middle of this and putting in 11 lots, we're proposing a road frontage subdivision. In some of the areas we have to access the frontage is encumbered by wetlands. So to get to the upland areas, I think it's very reasonable. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't actually finagle the lots to make them meet your requirements, because we're not that far off.
I mean, I have looked at the regulations, and, you know, it does say that financial justification can't be the sole reason. So that's why I have to, you know, I felt like I had to point that out, prior, simply because it was right in there.
So I guess, yeah, anytime an exception, variance, or just use permit is requested, that's a vetting process of it, is, you know, as to why can't it meet, why isn't it meeting the standards that are set forth? In, you know, and that's part of the process of when we have the discussion on the CUP that we're gonna have to hear is, so if our ordinance says 45,000 square feet max, you know, why aren't these that? Is it just to keep cleaner lines? Because again, a smaller lot preserves more open space, which is the intent. So that's probably gonna be one of the questions that comes up during that, is to justify the larger lots. So I was looking at some of them. Sheet A2 shows the lot table and the dimensions. So if we look, 1, 2, 3 are all under 45,000 square feet, as are 10 and 11. The ones that are, so 4 through 9 are in various degrees slightly over or vastly over the lot dimensions. So I think that's where those are gonna come into question as to, you know, why can't those be conformed? But again, that's probably something we should put a pin in tonight for, when we actually hear that case, but I would anticipate that being a discussion.
I have something to say. It was just brought up that perhaps giving it up to SELF and having them purchase the property, is that anything that Mr. Roseberg would consider?
I'm sure you would consider everything. Right now, we're proposing subdivision. But
So from conception, when did this start?
July, I believe,
This is new.
was the original
So this is,
application.
this may
Maybe
go
somewhere in
on,
July, I believe.
this may go on for quite some time. This could go on for quite some time.
are you asking me?
I'm guessing.
Or not.
No, I mean, we're in general, we try to move applications along.
Some
that-
take a year, some take 2 years.
Generally, those should be very few and far
I'm
between.
just saying it might be worth looking
Yeah.
into. It might be a nice idea. Seeing if they would come up with the money to pay for whatever has transpired so far. It's not out of the question. Could alleviate a lot of problems. All of this. Something to consider.
Absolutely.
And one of the couple of times tonight, I've heard mention of studies, so it's something, if a study is being requested, like the applicant said, I looked up hydrogeologic study specifically in our zoning and in our subdivision regs. In zoning, it's required for aquifer districts, for the subdivision regs. it only mentions them, yes, we have the ability to require any study, but it specifically mentions them for, one thing, hydrogeologic. Shall be required for development with a septic system being designed to accommodate 2,500 gallons per day or more. That's not the case here. Or a well or group of wells within a development based on full build-out with a combined withdrawal of over 20,000 gallons per day. I don't know the current numbers, but I believe the calculations for a house is less than 2,000 gallons per day for, I think it's, I don't know what the number is.
600.
So 6,600 total, so we're well below that number. But again, so I would just want to say that at this stage, where we've continued a few times, if there is are any studies that haven't been met, I know we've received one tonight, that we just have a motion with that tonight to try to make sure that we can get it back in time for the next meeting. Is there any other discussion from the board tonight on this?
It would just seem that the real spirit of open space is kind of violated by 8 and 9, that I hear the butters saying it's intruding into the open space, and they need to be larger lots, so it's clearly a financial reason that they need to be a larger lot. I see this as a 10 lot subdivision and not a 9 lot, and not an 11 lot one, and that one lot that's more in the configuration of the others be lot number 8 or 9. And not 8 and 9, that be one lot, a smaller lot. That's my thought.
And I guess, looking at lot 8 specifically, in lot 9, to be honest, I'd have to go back at our open space and see if this is an area that, but we have the lot envelope requirements in general, and we have an hourglass shape item indicating that the lot envelope can't be less than 50 feet in width at its narrowest. I would have to go back and review if that's within our open space as well, or again, the open space has alternative lot sizing for a reason. And I'd have to go back in and check that, but
9 just seems out of order.
If I may. So we had relocated 10 from between the existing map 72 lot 8 and map 72 lot 10, which are kind of the open area down in the corner where he has frontage. We relocated lot 10 from that area because the abutters had indicated they didn't like that. So the applicant indicated that he didn't want to lose that lot or move it, but he would. We added increased green space between lot 5 in order to help out the abutters. But if you're looking at it taking up the green space, well, then I think the area between the existing map 72 lot 8 and the map 72 lot 10 may be the place where we can relocate lot 9 to. And I think, if you look at it, it was left for an access to this property. It wasn't cut off, and we're not behind lot 5.
like I said, I'm gonna have to reread through specifically the open space subdivision, because again, in some areas, we free up some areas, and then other areas, we restrict it back. I'm looking at the, design standards for developed areas, specifically subdivision plan shall comply with any additional applicable standards governing the location and layout of lots and structures found elsewhere in this ordinance and is set forth in subdivision regulations. So that's the part where we don't specifically mention, like that narrowing part, and I don't know if that is needed for the contiguous area or not. So like lot 8 and 9, lot 8, it definitely is. Lot 9, I don't know if you remove like that area of impingement, that's less than 50 feet for the lot envelope itself. Would that be sufficient? I'm just trying to get back to that table and see if that area applied. So that would probably make lot 9, probably more conforming. So for me, I think we're, based on the revisions that have here, I think it's almost there. And again, I think, like Ms. Jones had kind of pointed out, I think at this point, and I said it early on, I think maybe it's one lot too many, and it was moved and they were shuffled around. I think 8 and 9 are probably the biggest concern here, and if one lot were to be potentially eliminated, that lot could be made smaller, you could preserve more open space, and it would be more in line with the lot sizing. That's just my comment.
I'd like to say something else, thinking out loud.
Of course.
If lots 8 and 9 get combined into one lot, that could potentially be available to people in the area to purchase, to protect, and therefore they will have access to the open space. Is that correct?
If somebody purchased lot, they would have access to the open space. Did I misrepresent that?
No, that's exactly where I was going.
You're speculating, say, 10 property owners decide to form a LLC and buy one of the properties.
Or
Now
just a
they're-
handshake, and go in and purchase 8 and 9 to keep it undeveloped, and then that also gives them access to the open space as well.
Absolutely. If they buy a lot, they get all the rights the lot owner would have.
within the covenants that are being formed.
Just a thought.
All right, so I'm gonna,
I'm seeing an idea of combining 8 and 9, but also making that new lot smaller and really removing the idea that the open space, that the house practically in the midst of the open space, and it is directly behind existing housing lots, kind of violating the spirit of things. Whereas we had one smaller lot with a bit more open space and a house guaranteed not to be directly behind existing houses, I think that would set well and fit with the spirit of our regulations a lot more.
okay. So there's some food for thought there between now and your next meeting. So at this point, though, do you have any other kind of questions at this point? So I'd make a motion, or I'd entertain a motion to continue. Applicant has a meeting in Raymond, November 3rd, so it would have to be at earliest our first meeting in November, which is November, anybody know the date? November 9th. And new deliverables ideally would be at least a week ahead of time, especially if there's any major revisions. Is the November 9th date? Does that work for you, Mr. Guyer?
Yeah, so we're gonna continue to November 9th and any revisions by the 2nd then,
Ideally, but I understand that
right?
based on what Raymond's input
Yeah,
could
it
be.
wouldn't, obviously it wouldn't probably be until after the meeting, Thursday,
The fourth, so Friday would be the 4th.
right?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to continue case 22-011-SUB to November 9th, 7 PM.
I'll second.
The motion by Mr. Anderson and second by Ms. Mooney. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, the motion is carried. So this case is continued to November 9th. The only new abutter notification that went out or is going out is regarding the conditional use permits. Otherwise, we will see everybody for this case then.
Thank you. No, it's all right.
Next item on the agenda is case 22014-SUB, application from Joseph Falzone on behalf of George Williams and Diane Kelly requesting an 8-lot subdivision. Property is located on Stevens Hill Road, identified as tax map 46, lot 7. Stevens Hill Road is a scenic town road, and the applicant is applying for a conditional use permit. Mr. Falzone, I apologize, it seems like you're always get put on last on the agenda, but we go by case number, so. If you wouldn't mind just bringing us up to speed in between our site walk, the original application where we accepted the application. It was not a development of regional impact. We held a site walk. There was a pretty good sized revision to the plan. If you'd like to speak to that, or your representative could speak to it.
Yeah, the only change, and I copied the planner with, is originally the abutters asked me if I could get the curb cuts down to 5, by joining them.
Yep.
I tried to get them down to 4, but lot 1 was already reserved to a buyer, and you have that unusual clause in your zoning that says a shared driveway has to follow the lot line until it gets to the building envelope.
Yep.
And the buyers of lot 1 don't want that. So the only difference from our site walk is, I have 2 separate driveways for lot 1 and 2. So I'm still at the 5 driveways that people asked me to get. As you know from the walk, the abutter is purchasing and joining together so that lot 7 is an 18-acre lot. I've proposed a deed easement with the restrictions that they can have passive recreation on the back portion of the land that I'm volunteering to put a conservation easement on, as well as there'll be a deed restriction for all 7 lot owners, that there's a no cut on the 100 feet along the roadway. So,
Okay. All right, thank you. And Mr. Haney, did you have any additional comments based on any resubmission, updated plans?
Yeah, I was just going over stuff here, but I was listening to Mr. Falzone, and I might have missed something, but I had noted in the news summary that lots 1 and 2 now have a shared driveway, in addition to lots 5 and 6. I guess that's not the case anymore?
correct.
Okay.
And I sent Kevin an example, and I have, they're very close together. But again, because you have that bylaw that you have to, I think you have to go to the zoning board of appeals if you want to do a shared curb cut. And in this case, if it was a shared curb cut, it'd only be over 10 feet, and the driveways would be by themselves. And I don't want to go to the zoning board of appeals for that.
Is 10-6, I'm sorry, is 10-6 the latest plans?
Yes. Yeah, if I can update, Scott Cole from Beal Associates. So the change actually happened recently, right after we had submitted plans in coordination with the perfected buyer of lot 1. So it was actually after the site walk, when we explained the driveway locations. Joe coordinated with the abutter and said, he discovered there was a problem. They actually do not want that kind of ownership. So we have not actually given you that on paper form.
Okay.
I do have that on the board in front of us here. For those of you that were on the site walk, we were at this location, looking at this location. The existing culvert in the roadway is actually on the proposed lot line. The common drive was going to go straight off of that, and we were gonna relocate the existing culvert. With this scenario here, actually, the existing culvert would be able to stay in its exact same location. We would put driveways on each side of that, 10 feet each side from the culvert, so it'd be a 20-foot separation. So the existing culvert could stay, we could just clean it out, make sure that it's functioning properly, because it's not really right now. And there would just be simply 2 added driveway culverts leading to that put in. For vegetation, there was, I believe, 2, it's actually a twin oak, 1 tree, 2 trunks going up. Jamie Long's here, he can explain, but it wasn't in the greatest of health anyhow. That one would need to come down, but the other ones would remain. So I think everybody was there that it could actually see that. And while I'm going, just some quick updates for the actual plans. There was a request to put the building envelopes in. I've added that in bold to one of the plans, so you can see the continuous area for the building envelopes. We have worked with the fire department. They issued a letter. All sprinklers will be required for the homes in lieu of the cistern. And we believe we have addressed all of the comments. So I think that's where we are this evening.
So it's 6 total driveways, 1 likely to never be built, being proposed lot 7.
Correct, and as you recall, lot 1, as far as the scenic issue goes, is really more or less existing. There's no tree vegetation or stone walls in that location because it's already a toll road.
Yep.
So if needed, he would use that location and not disturb anything else.
Lot 7, right.
Correct, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, 7.
And that was also gonna be the furthest away from any wetland as well, if I remember correctly from the plan and from the sidewalk. All right, and since then, you've also had a chance, I believe you met with the Conservation Commission.
Yes, and they issued a letter.
Ms. Mui, did you want to speak to any of that?
Yes, I could do something formal. We met with the applicants on the 17th of October, and they went over the plans and talked about the vernal pools and the steep slopes, and also the conservation issue, protecting the land and back along the Bean River watershed. The short story is that we were very pleased with the attention to conservation, and we approved their application for a conditional use permit.
And before we continue, I apologize, point of order, let the record show Mr. McKinnon rejoined the table and is participating fully as vice chair for this case. Mr. Davies has returned to his alternate non-voting position. Apologize on that one.
And I have a quick question, so I don't have to go through all my papers. The culvert site, is that near Vernal Pool 1? No. So, okay,
The one we were just speaking of?
yeah, the culvert, yeah.
No, it's actually, it's quite a ways down the road, actually.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question regarding the fire department note. And I know the applicant mentioned, I don't have the letter, so I can't refer to it, but I'm wondering.
Look in the front of your binder.
I can read it to you quickly. It's, it indicates that for this case, in addition to the letter, in lieu of the installation of a cistern, it recommends fire protection of all residences be provided by sprinkler systems that at a minimum meet the requirements of NFPA 13-D, standard for 1 and 2 family dwellings in manufactured homes, which I believe is what the applicant is proposing.
Correct.
The cistern.
We can require that?
The fire chief we can require cisterns and such, and so if it's, the applicant is choosing to go in lieu of and agree to put in
So it does say in lieu of cisterns, definitely.
in lieu
That
of
was my
installation of a
question.
cistern, yep. So we do have a conditional use permit, so we can read that. I actually don't have a copy. Unless I lost it in my folder. the conditional use permit application that's requested. I'd like to just read it before we open the public hearing, and then, we can have comment first, and then open the public hearing again, get any additional comment, and then, potentially act on that.
Read the whole app, like all the responses, is that what you're suggesting?
I was gonna read the specific, what is being requested,
Oh, just the summary.
yes.
Ed, I have it on my computer.
Yeah,
if
I
you
got it
want.
here.
Thank you. Remind me, 'cause I don't think I was at the first meeting, but I was caught up. Was the conditional use permit voted on and accepted? Or this is the first time we're
Correct. So this,
discussing that, correct? Okay, that's what I thought.
so a conditional use permit, a conditional permit is requested per Article 3, Section B6 of the zoning ordinance to allow minor wetland impact for proposed driveway access, which are essential for the development of the land, and other land has been protected from mitigation. They've been designed and located on the parcel to minimize wetland and buffer impact to the greatest extent possible. Erosion controls will be in place and managed until the areas are stabilized. No current violations. Actually, I'll just read through it. Approving the conditional use will provide access to the parcels at the shortest distances for fire and emergency response as compared to long common driveways. Overhead utilities are available in the existing road, and individual wells and septics are proposed. There's a small portion of the property that's within the 100-year floodplain. This will be entirely in a protected conservation easement. The small areas of steep slopes not within the easement will be avoided by development. Being an undeveloped large parcel of land and subdividing into 8 conventional lots should not impact the surrounding parcels. Groundwater impact should be negligible. AASHTO estimate of vehicle trips are 11 to 12 per unit. Due to the volunteered 100-foot setback from the road, lighting will not be an issue. The developer has agreed to a 100-foot building setback from the road to maintain the existing rural feel of the area and buffer the new homes. The resulting lots will be similar to the abutting parcels. The new lots are of conventional size, separation in kind with the existing homes and lots. Again, a 100-foot buffer of existing road, back portion of the property to be protected by conservation easement. Will not change the look and feel of the neighborhood. All utilities will be individual and on-site, and is customary with new development in Nottingham, which means underground. There will be no increased impact to the town above what is standard for residential lot. The buildable portions of the property are located just behind a narrow wetland. And the proposed crossing locations are at the least impacting areas related to either the wetlands or vernal pools on the site. In the areas of wetland crossings, the underground utilities will be beneath the driveways. The remaining distance of lines to the homes will run adjacent to the drives. I believe that was a concern that was mentioned. And the applicant is confirming that their intention is to run the utilities along the driveway, not separately up through the woods. They did evaluate alternate and longer common drives. The crossing simply will allow access to the best portion of the buildable areas. So, I guess before we get into any further discussion, I'll open the public hearing. So we're gonna be acting on that tonight, on that conditional use permit application.
You need to formally accept the conditional use? Accept the application like we would.
I was gonna ask that. Accept the application. as
Just
complete.
accept it as complete.
Yeah,
I mean, we have.
I guess you're better off making the vote, there's no harm in doing that. I didn't see anything that technically said you had to, but I guess if it's,
Yep.
I'm just thinking of it,
Yep,
it's gotta be a
yep.
publicly noticed application anyway, so
It
I know
looks-
we're still trying to work through some of this with conditional use.
Yeah, it looked complete in my.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept the conditional use permit for, look for all my stuff. Minor wetland impact for case number 22-014-SUP.
I'll second.
That's complete, right?
That's complete, so, yes.
So that's a motion by Mr. McKinnon and a second by Ms. Mooney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. So that just means we can now act on the application tonight. So again, before we go any further, I'll just reopen the public hearing. Anybody that would like to speak for, against, or just has general questions in regards to this subdivision, please step forward. Again, just address your comments to the board, please, and identify yourself when you come up.
I'm Bob Daniel, I'm in a butter, and I just heard that a Conservation Commission issued a letter. So I don't think that it was stated what the letter said, or, so if you could just clarify what the letter says.
Well, it's quite extensive, and I've probably already put it away. Generally, those letters are directed to the planning board because they want our input, and it's not for public knowledge before they receive it.
Okay.
So if you are interested in that, you could ask the chair for a copy.
Yeah, and it will become part of the case.
Yeah, if it gets added into the record, we are involved with the easements. We just wanted to see what was stated regarding the easement, that's all. Okay, thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, and so in general, anytime there's a conditional use permit application proposed, there's a step in that process that, for wetlands specifically, there's a step in that process that requires some input from the Conservation Commission to the board. Scenic roads are also require Conservation Commission review. That's for removal of trees and or stone walls. So there's a couple of different areas that are specifically called out in our regs that we ask for input from the Conservation Commission. And then obviously we look to them for additional information when sensitive areas are are part of a subdivision.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I believe we had language as well on this one that went to council, if I remember correctly. So anytime we get language for either easements or covenants or HOAs, anything like that, that language is sent to our town council for review. And I know I saw the comment come back. I don't have a copy with me tonight as to what that comment was. I believe, again, there was some questions, yeah. But while we're pulling that up, is there any other public comment? Or against questions? No. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. So we do have a conditional use permit. I think acting on that at this point, unless anybody else has a point of order, I think acting on that would be in order at this time. We outline in our ordinance the criteria for this. Again, there's no impact within that vernal pool buffer. We discussed that on the sidewalk, because that we cannot waive, or by conditional use permit, it's only direct impacts to the wetlands. So there's 5 criteria, and I'll read those off. So conditional use permits would be only granted provided that no alternative route which does not cross a wetland or has less detrimental impact on the wetland is feasible, and all the following conditions are found to exist. Proposed construction is essential to the productive use of land not within a wetland conservation area, and the upland area considered for development is not smaller acreage than the wetland area being considered. Designs, construction, maintenance methods will be such to minimize detrimental impact upon the wetland, and will include restoration of the site as nearly as possible to its original grade and conditions. The Nottingham Conservation Commission has provided comments relative to the value of the wetland under construction and design of the proposed project as it relates to the wetland. Economic advantage alone is not a reason for the proposed construction. Prior to the granting of the conditional use permit, under the section, the applicant shall agree to submit a performance security to ensure all construction is carried out in accordance with an approved design. The security shall be submitted in a form and amount and surety and conditions satisfactory to the planning board for site plan subdivision application, and the board of selectmen in all other cases. And then there's discussion about the surety. The planning board may require the applicant to submit an environmental impact assessment when necessary to evaluate the application made under this section. So the only one of those, well, we can speak towards any piece of that. The one hiccup for me, and I think it's the way we worded this, and I think in the language in it continues on, that would allow us to have it be part of the condition if it was to be granted, is that prior to the granting of the permit under this section, about the surety. So the sureties are generally something that we do as a condition, as a final condition, not prior to, because if, again, it's, generally you're not gonna get a surety or a bond for something unless it's being approved, so.
I think the intent there is right, is the prior construction.
And it does say that, I believe, later on. The proper surety in the form, submit to the town to ensure the completion of work. No work shall start on the property until proper surety is in place. That's number one under that section, so I think that is what covers us there. So we have a conditional use permit application in front of us that we've accepted as complete. I'd entertain any discussion on that and or a motion.
I think my take on it is that it's a case of where it was minimized to include a shared driveway, to make 2 lots accessible. I think they've addressed all the concerns. The application was thorough, so.
And this is specifically that area that we looked at on the site walk. There was a vernal pool that was degraded along the road. It was kind of like potentially ditching area that was also, that's the wetland impact that we're discussing.
Yeah, Jamie Long can speak to it if you want specific details. But
I believe that was
basically
what you pointed out.
the area of the wetland that we were actually looking at, it really is an overland flow based on a roadside ditch.
Yep.
You know, the wetlands kind of comes towards the right of way, goes along the edge of the road, and then goes to the vernal pool area. So it kind of more or less is a man-made, but still is a wetland.
Between lots 5 and proposed lots 5 and 6.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we are a minimum at 25 feet away from the vernal pool area, so there'll be no disturbance there. Per the sidewalk, the site walk too, I did add, in reference to the actual culvert that's being in, I did add the requirements of a riprap outlet on the end of it. There was concern of maybe, turbidity or faster water getting to that vernal pool area.
Yep.
So by putting the riprap and creating a little bit of a plunge pool, does 2 things. Takes the turbidity and the energy out of the water so it can slowly dissipate to the vernal pool and gives it a time for the sediment to actually deteriorate a little bit before it goes out. So that was also one of the reasons why the original square footage went up a little bit, because I had to make sure that I had room for that riprap. But it's worth doing so because it'll be cleaner water going that way. So.
Yeah, no, that was a concern on the sidewalk, that it was sedimentation specifically was mentioned a number of times in that smaller vernal pool. And then the prior plan had shown a larger wetland impact that for what had been lot 7, that's completely been eliminated through the combining with that 7 and 8. So this, from where we were to where we are, it completely eliminated substantial impact. Now there's a minimal impact that potentially is going to improve the vernal pool quality just to the north, I believe. Plan look at that north road.
Yeah.
Just gonna bring something up that we noticed on the sidewalk when we were in the area of Vernal Pool 1. And the co-op had come through and just removed all of the vegetation. Winterberry holly, which is a very important browse species for birds, and also provided cover for the vernal pool. And now that's been completely removed. So the fate of vernal pool number 1 is really in question. I wonder if the applicant would consider maybe adding some vegetation back in that area that would be proper for protecting vernal pool 1 when you construct your driveway.
Well, you know that you can't stop them from coming back when it grows and cutting it, but, we could put some at the edge along the road there.
Yeah.
That's shaded, or beside where we're doing. I mean, Jamie's here, I think that he'd be better to tell us what we should do.
Or advise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can come up with some compatible shrubs or something, but I think the town probably would mow it down themselves, but you can try it and hope it blank it out when they, let the road agent know that
Yeah.
we're trying to keep some shade there, but.
Yeah, this is a conversation we need to have with road agent and Conservation Commission and, people who.
Co-op the next time they come in.
Co-op, yeah. They
Well,
call
you
it,
have to remember that pole's right there and everything, so you gotta try to keep that, you can't let trees grow into the line either.
true.
That's why we try to come up with some sort of compatible that probably total height 15 feet, something like that.
Well, they ask permission, or they notify us that they're gonna remove, certain size trees. And then they say shrubbery, or what do they call it? Some,
Like undergrowth or something like that.
yeah, something that's not, desirable, where in fact it is desirable.
Yeah, I think on scenic roads, I think that's just a learning curve for this
Brush,
board
they
as
call
well.
it,
Where
brush.
if they're coming before us, we can always, I think that's a comment that we should make to them, is that they avoid, removal of all shrubbery that's
Brush.
in a,
The
you know, more
grinding of
wetland,
the
but,
forest floor.
yeah.
So, I know it's a great suggestion, but the power companies that are hiring these people to do it,
Yeah,
they don't care.
right.
I know, John.
So I'm just saying it's a mute point, it's a point that we're bringing up. And I understand, 'cause they did it behind my house in the power lines, they cut it all down to crap. and
Yeah, but
it's
if you
a
go out and talk to them, they won't do
I
that.
did, actually got them to cut a little bit less, but
There you go.
you have to be there at the time of doing it.
So I think there's a bigger.
So I don't know who's gonna police it.
Yeah. No, I do think there's a bigger discussion. I think, to Ms. Mooney's point, for this specific one, is there a way to potentially improve it quicker than nature would? And if so, if the applicant is so willing, I think that would be something that would,
And that's a great point.
Nice
because
gesture, yeah.
A lot of those things that they cut, the red maple, this is gonna suck it pretty quickly anyway.
Yeah,
Come in with shrub within, 3 or 4 years with growth, but it's not the most desired place to grow anything anyway, it's right off the edge of the road. But every little bit helps.
yeah, thank you.
any further discussion on this, or would anybody like to make a motion in regards to the conditional use permit?
I'll make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit submitted under case number 22-014-SUB, specifically for Article 3, Section B6 in the zoning ordinance for a minor wetland impact, totaling, I think, approximately 210 square feet, pending state approval. Is it?
I'll second it.
There's a motion by Mr. McKinnon, and a second by Ms. Mooney. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All is opposed, motion carries 7-0. Right. So it brings us back, to the application itself. So obviously with that process, there's a surety that's gonna be needed at some point, before building can commence. So that's outlined in the ordinance.
The only issue that is open right now is I need to get deed language to the Conservation Commission that I'm gonna put in the deed regarding the 100-foot buffer along the road.
Yep.
And deed language that the two owners that are gonna get the conservation easements, that they're gonna be allowed recreational use, and that it will be protected.
Okay.
Other than state permits and that, I don't know of anything else.
And Kevin, you pulled up, councils. Did she have any other comments that were, it seemed like they were big hangups?
So regarding this, I actually was mistaken, I thought it was, we went back and forth.
I know, I read a
And
few,
I don't recall
any language.
the immediate back and forth that Mr. Falzone came up.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
I remember it was one from Mr. Chris Berry, and then the other one was for, Woods Road, the, Barry.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, I mean,
And then just to be sure for us as a board, the surety would be for cause it's based off a cost estimate, is that, my assumption is they would provide a cost estimate to essentially get through the impact, obviously not for the construction of a full driveway, but there's gonna be a 50-foot distance or something like that, so.
It won't be much.
Yeah, it's really just to be able to construct that and not have additional impacts once that driveway is used for construction of the house, so. Just a small 30, 50-foot corridor, whatever that distance ends up being. That, I assume that's what the estimate would be
Yeah.
provided on, and then it's 115% of that.
Yeah, it says cost shall include the cost of inspection and testing.
Luckily, it's a driveway, so the road agent should be able to handle all that as part of the driveway permit.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's held for 2 years, it looks like.
Are you ready for any other general comments?
Yeah, of course, yep.
I was unable to make the first meeting, but I know I provided some comments as well in the beginning, and I was able to go by the site, and see some of the flagging as well, which was helpful. And I know you sent some clarification to me as well about that frontage, and my comment originally was about, essentially, I think what you guys are doing now, which is just analyzing to see, is there any sort of giving per se to the town because of that, we have a lot of 25-foot right-of-ways in the town, so it looks like, based on the submission, so are you guys, have you pulled back the front property lines, is that what's being done?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
actually a good comment, Ian, thank you. So what I did is we actually, at the recommendation of the board, I took the average center line as Stevens sits today. I offset that 25 feet, and the new bounds of the lots will be that 25 feet, which for most part is now behind the stone wall.
Okay.
So depending on what happens in the future with the lots across the street, that's up to them and you, but
Yeah.
our deed was to give the 25-foot necessary from center line for road improvements. We have done so.
Okay, so essentially what you're doing as part of this subdivision is establishing a new front lot line, so there's no easement to the town. Essentially, you're saying, hey, we're gonna put our lot line here.
Correct.
Whatever's over there, essentially, you're kind of relinquishing to the town. It's kind of a gray area, but
More
it's
or
not,
less,
it's not gonna be the landowner, the new landowner's land, so.
We can.
Kind of helps you with the step of having to do a strip easement and to get it approved by the Board of Selectmen, and
Correct.
nobody ever really knows where those go anyway. So, no, I think that's a clean way to do it, and I thank you for doing that. It's, I think we can all agree at some point this road will need some ditch work in this area. There's a lot of these roads where there's no space for, there's a lot of erosion, so I think that's helpful. Thank you. Other than that, I think everything else has been taken care of. I had a comment about the lot 7 and 8, but that's now been, obviously, we're gotten rid of that, so I think I'm good.
Is there any further discussion by the board? So I think.
Public hearing on this one, or do we?
We already opened it and closed it. So I think we're at the point now that, in this, and we can continue waiting for that language of the deed information, or the language, or have that be a condition on any approval that may be motioned. I think we're far enough along, and we've seen the revisions get to where we need to be, and we've acted on the conditional use permit. Those are the big items for this one.
Received a lot of deed language and stuff like that, I mean,
But we haven't seen that final plan, right?
The only
the driveway change?
change would the two driveways on the, correct, that was the only change
Yeah,
between
everything
that
else is the
and
same.
prior was the, and that goes back to kind of what was originally shown
Prior, that's correct.
prior, yeah.
And you said ultimately, before we put the driveways in, we should meet with the road agent.
Yep.
Because there was a couple of trees that they're gonna knock down with their snowplow.
Yep.
And he's gotta decide if he wants us to take them down or not.
Right. Yep.
Gotta really keep trying to with the wind of the plow.
Yeah, I think one of the driveways, if you shifted it 5 feet this way, is potentially gonna take this tree down.
Right.
Which was a bigger tree, but it was already, if I remember correctly, the base was already hit by a plow.
Yeah, that's the way out.
So potentially, if, that would be the better of the two. But yes, the road agent, the driveway permit process will assist on that.
And we're not worried about the condition that the conservation has to sign off on the deed restriction, because we have a clear understanding of what we want to achieve.
Yep.
And with having the two landowners control it, no one else has public access to it. There's no public access that people can go in there and do anything, other than allowing the two owners recreational use of it.
restriction language, right? It's for the two separate deed restrictions.
Right, for lots, 1 and 7, because they control all the backland. And then in the deed, there's gonna be, in everyone's deed, that there's a no-cut 100-foot buffer, other than for the driveway and utilities.
Yep.
Ian, put deed restriction / conservation easement. Because one can morph into another as things progress.
Is that it? The project-specific conditions?
Yeah, and then it's the standard stuff, bound set, the 300 foot, like you said, pins can be allowed.
Yep. Oh yeah, that's a good one. I usually catch myself checking out. Yeah, I'll just write that down.
Will we have our attorney review those deed restrictions too, as well as?
We generally do any kind of thing like that, we generally just pass through for a review and comment.
We provided, the commission provided Mr. Falzoni with a recent conservation easement deed that has all of the language in it that had been reviewed by the attorney, a town attorney, and approved. So they are going to use that as a template with this project.
Okay.
If there's
And
big
who is
changes like
the,
drainage easements and things like that, then that changes it substantially, but if there's none in this.
And is that conservation easement, who is that through? Cell or, you know?
You know, I don't remember which one I pulled. Mr. Falzoni, do you remember?
If you say the project name, I will.
10 o'clock. Sam, do you remember? Oh, I do remember. It was the Shippey, it was Rice, Shippey Rice. It was a conservation easement along the North River. That's the one we provided. Yeah, through Bear Paw. Was it like,
Last call. Make sure I get the case number right.
Got it all?
I'll make a motion that we approve case number 22-014-SUB, with the following conditions, or standard conditions, fees, bound set, plan copies with final stamps, proof of state permits for a wetland permit, impact permit, deed restriction and conservation easement language be provided to the Conservation Commission and Planning Board Legal Counsel for review and comment, specifically for lots 1 and 7. As shown on the plans, and noted in several locations, each lot to have a 100-foot limited cut front buffer, / building setback. And, just one thing is if final plans to show bounds at 300 feet or less spacing, just for those intermediate sidelines. Those can be iron pins, no more than 300 feet apart, so. It looks like.
We don't have to cross the river, though.
No, specifically for, at like between 1 and 2 and between 2 and 3, just those like 500, 600 foot, just toss one in the middle. We have a requirement for no more than 300 feet between a pin. Yep, so that's just, which is fine. We have some people add them as the final plan, so. And that's all I got.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McKinnon, a second by Mr. Anderson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know, where it's humid.
I would think it would be so hot this time of year.
Gotta be into the bathroom.
We'll just take that. That's the only thing I wrote on it, so I don't know. You're typing it up. You're the one typing it up.
I have it in.
No, I wanna see you scrolling in on your phone.
Either way, all right.
Okay, I apologize if that's confusing. I meant, when I opened that public hearing. Yeah, I apologize. When I opened the public hearing, I meant for it to be for the whole thing, so I apologize.
Conditional use, it can overlap with the same application, all under 22-014 FASD, right?
Well, it
In
wasn't
general,
with
right?
the
It's
original.
one application.
It wasn't with it originally,
Inside-
so it really depends. It doesn't hurt to do it. So, other comment tonight?
Sherry stepped out, just you.
Public comments, time of night where we reserve time for general public to come in and speak about planning and zoning, any questions they may have. We can't talk about specific properties. There's nobody additional here tonight, so we'll move on.
Get rid of the wrap.
We just never brought it up until now. Let me tell you, you go back and look at tons of
If you wouldn't mind, just step up. Thanks, Blair. Thank you, everybody.
I remember when you couldn't drop cul-de-sac.
We have one set of minutes, thank you. Set of minutes, it was just the sidewalk minutes from 10:05. I had submitted the minutes. I know some edits came in from Ms. Mooney. I had wrongly named the person that joined the walk late, so I appreciate Ms. Mooney both notating that and catching it and updating it. But I'd entertain a motion regarding those minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the minutes of 10/5/2022 site walk.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Mooney, second by Mr. Anderson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We have 601 with the abstention by Mr. Moran. Select Board, Staff Board member updates. We'll just go around the room. Ms. Jones?
None.
I do have two things.
All right.
Well, so after a conversation with our current town administrator, and he found he knew that I stepped down as a rep.
Yep.
And was asking questions, and I said one of the big things that was an issue for me was the fact that the town wasn't stepping up to the plate and becoming a member. So that was.
Couldn't vote,
Right, right, so now I understand it's being pushed into the budget, so that's.
No.
It may be.
No? Okay, you can correct that then.
Yeah, I've got it on here too, so, for me.
And so the other thing is, just, I'll pass this around for anybody who'd like to see it. This is, just info on the 10-year plan, and towns, some of the, items that are on that. And so it's kind of interesting to see, how that was put together and things that are happening. There are a couple in Lee, Durham, Somersworth, Newmarket. So anyway, nearby and maybe not so nearby, so, appreciate that.
Mr. Moran?
Well, we are
See that?
going to be very busy in the hiring process, for all knows the reasons why. Budget's coming up, and last meeting we went over the budget. We had, the police chief in, we went over some stuff with the highway, we went over, rec department. So we met with not everybody, but we met with a fair few of the, department heads. And as the budget sits right now, in order to meet the 4%, we are going to have to cut probably 110,000 or so off the budget. Just so you know, nothing has been really added to the budget. Insurance has gone up 11%. We did have to give people, our police department, people that we needed a little bit of a raise in order to complete with to go on there.
Didn't the insurance pretty much go up? There's like $111,000.
Yeah, it's
increase in insurance. Yeah.
So I understand the value, again, there's gonna be cuts. There's gonna be things that we're gonna have to do. And I hope the people of Nottingham understand that. We'll have this other meeting, on the budget, that in order to meet this new, warrant article, so happy that it passed, and everybody else's, services will be cut. And it's gonna be a tough year for us, so.
I know there was concern too about,
With increasing, population, cutting services.
Oh, yeah, things are gonna be, if we have to abide by that, you're gonna find those there, so if you got an opinion on it, come out and voice it.
I know there was some public
And
that had
the,
concerns over
I think
like,
the next budget committee meeting is tomorrow evening.
I thought it was the 1st of November.
Maybe it is, maybe it
Yeah.
is.
It's gonna be up like November 7th.
Mr. McGinn,
But, that's, whatever, it's late at night,
so if you can't attend, like any town meeting, or, board meeting.
Well, you can watch it on TV.
You can also email
Chime in on
and,
email,
and
absolutely.
submit comment, because it's tough to be in person, to any of these
No, I'm
meetings.
just saying people
No,
beware.
And I'm
It's
encouraging
helpful to
people,
be physically there, though.
I'm
It
encouraging
really is
people that you
helpful
can
when
submit
people are
comment, so
physically
your
there.
voice is heard, even when you cannot attend these things, so.
Nope.
First selectman, no.
Where it's still every other. We haven't found, we might have a meeting that comes up that, in case of, something that's serious comes up, but.
If certain areas have to get cut,
Or things will be added.
can warrant articles be created to add those back in? That would, because again, the budget is capped based on the prior vote about the 4%. But warrant articles are separate from that, is my
And
understanding.
that was a concern from some of the
So
public, that people would circumvent the 4% by doing more warrant articles.
Right.
Well, when necessary.
But again, you can write a warrant article, but it doesn't mean it's gonna pass.
Correct. Oh, correct. But it gives, it's a potential
It's another avenue to
to allow
absolutely
a
think,
vote
sure.
for people to have a vote, right?
But it's the beauty of the warrant articles is put us in the 4% criteria where we had massive inflation and now it's going to be
Half of inflation.
Good. All right.
good and minuses to everything.
And it is CIP.
And we have a meeting on Monday.
Oh, there you go. The
So-
CIP, I know you brought up a couple times about impact fee. and
Yep.
Involvement of CIP with maybe something with the fire department.
Yeah.
If
The CIP been formed at all? Do you-
That's, of all the committees I sit on, that's just one I don't, so I won't be able to speak to that until somebody tells me something on Monday.
Just add that on my list. So I'm just gonna, we are, to my understanding, on myself and or Mr. McKinnon are on the agenda with the select board for Monday to speak towards our part of the budget. So I plan on being there. If I can't, I will reach out to other members of the board to see if someone can go, but I fully anticipate being there on Monday.
I'm trying to be, and even if you are, I'll try. Join as well.
And I had the CIP part on there as a reminder to us. The only other thing I have for me is we have our, Kevin had sent out the calendar for SB2 town warrant articles. We need to be mindful of that as to, anything we're planning on getting on to the, I had it right here. Well, it is right here. Last day to post and publish notice for public hearing on zoning amendments, if a second hearing is anticipated, is January 6th. So we're, we'd have to get stuff written, reviewed by legal and get ready for that public hearing within the next, month or so. So November 6th is a pretty full meeting, I think. Sounds like we have a number of continued cases. We will not,
That's November 9th, so you have 2 meetings left before that January
Correct.
6th, so FYI, 1 meeting each month.
Yep.
Unless you guys add something.
yeah,
But it would be November 9th. Not too, so no new cases,
There's 2 continuations, right?
a couple of continuations, so it'll probably be roughly the same size as this meeting right now. Here we are at 10:30.
Right.
Fair enough, but, I didn't get any new cases, which is a shock. I can't remember the last time I didn't get a new hearing or a new application or planning.
so,
It's been a while.
so what I'll do is, I'll circle back with Mr. Haney to see what we kind of identified. I think a few of us may have taken a couple of action items to say we'll work on them. I suggest that for the November 9th meeting, that part of that is, we just say, okay, here's what we've identified. Let's potentially hold a workshop on November 16th. You know, we'll have to look at the schedule and see, and dedicate a meeting to just those, but only if we have stuff that we're ready to really work on and move forward with, potentially. I don't wanna waste anybody's time, but, you know, I know there's some important things in there that we have to address, so. So I will make a note to myself and I'll follow up on that. And I apologize, I skipped right over Mr. McKinnon on the staff board updates.
No, I didn't really have any, just more so curious about the CIP, and then one I was gonna ask at the end. Kevin, I know your last day's coming up, is there anything that, like, who's gonna monitor your mail-in box?
So,
Just cause I know you probably get a decent amount of emails, and I'd hate to have people.
I was gonna mention that.
Okay.
We're at the point now where you should get ready for people taking, probably even board members taking some things and kind of driving the bus on it. My understanding is that Kelly will be handling some stuff, sending out notices, things like that, collecting applications. As far as, checking emails, she'll be able to access my email. But I think when things come up in the so I think that's where we're gonna lag, is when things come up in the meeting, get a hold of these folks, you know, anything that's gonna come up here that would, you know, someone should be jotting that down, saying whether you're reaching out to, Lamprey River yourself, or anything that we talked about today, I'm gonna take care of. Friday's gonna be my last day, I'll have a busy day on Friday.
If we just keep giving you work, you can't leave, right?
I'm not that far, and ironically, I drive by on my way home.
We'll put a sign out there, we'll put like a little mailbox flag, if it's up, we need you to stop.
I know to take a left instead of a right. So I'm not that far, so if you guys have questions about stuff, plus when you bring someone on, I've talked about coming in and training that person. So when that does happen, I'm available for that, just showing them. I think the system now is pretty self-explanatory, so I think if I sat someone down and said, here's the process, just point them to it, I think they should be able to pick it up a little bit quicker than what I was given. I don't mean to say it in a negative way, but, you know. So I think it would be, anything that comes up in the meeting, someone should be jotting it down, like, you know, just, you know.
Sure.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Somebody-
Yeah,
have
fair enough.
somebody, yeah.
I'll reach out to the interim TA as well and just make sure we get bulletized as to what the duty is, who's gonna do it, the process there, so, because again, we have statutes that we have to abide by, so I appreciate that, that reminder. Somebody?
I don't have anything, conservation, but Gary, were you gonna send us a link from Stratford Regional?
Oh,
that-
you're right.
About
Thank
the
you.
violence?
Yeah, I'll get it to you. I apologize, I didn't do that.
I'm upset.
Pass.
Yes. So I do have a couple things. With regards to zoning amendments, I'm gonna be forwarding one to the group to hopefully look at the next meeting and vote to put on a public hearing in December. This one is for amending our aquifer and groundwater protection district. This community, along with several others, was part of a grant that SRPC looked into to try to bring, to basically do like a gap analysis of the regulations for the few communities that signed on to the grant and bring them in line with the state regulations and any updates that have happened in the recent years. So there's some changed language about uses, trying to be more specific about what hazard materials are and how they can be stored, identifying an agent that would essentially act as the enforcement agent. So there's a couple of things like that. It's nothing too consequential, but it is something that, you know, the town had originally signed on for, and we're now coming back to you. So Autumn Scott in our office is the one that did all this legwork. She's now handed it over to me to bring to you. And so that's kind of the stage we're at now. So I'm just gonna bring it to your attention that this is coming down, and I will be sending it out to you. Sure, if you decide what to do with it, but this is, essentially what we're trying to do. The other one, and I had a little back and forth with Ed to try and just get my head wrapped around with this, and now I wanted to bring it for the full board. There's a gentleman that's been inquiring about, I've been using the word decouple. I don't really know what the word would be, but basically there's an existing tower, wireless communication tower that's owned by somebody, and they are on this, and for reasons like cost and service, the adequacy of the service, they would like to decouple or go onto their own site, and trying to get a sense of what what that would look like. And the reason why I'm bringing it up, I had mentioned to him, I told him what his options were about coming in preliminary, but identifying a site. He just was trying to fill out what that was about. And I had asked Ed to say, did you remember anything that we had done in the past with regards to any applications that came up in the past? And it didn't seem like there was any. There was definitely not any that had made the same request.
What is this request?
To decouple a cell tower.
Essentially, he wants a new telecommunications tower.
I would just recommend a conceptual come through to us, and I think it could be very high level, because again, our zoning is what it is, and we've only had one case in the 12 years I can remember since we added that ordinance.
Because we do have a telecommunications overlay.
Yeah, we do.
We do.
And that's got some specific language, so, if the language is strict, then it's gonna have probably zoning relief that's required, and, if it's not so strict, then, but we may be able to have some of that come through as a conceptual.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I
Especially
recommended.
if they don't have a specific site in plan, I mean, they can, I guess, pick a site
and then start to react to that.
Yeah. The site's gonna be the huge factor.
Yep.
Okay.
Somebody's not gonna want it in their backyard.
Yeah.
There's different ways, yeah, to get there from here.
So yeah, that's the type of project that can raise a lot of eyebrows in the community, so I just wanted to see what you guys thought, or what your experience was, more what your
Is
experience
it
was.
an existing tower now here?
Yeah, sorry, I wish I could have explained it better. Yes, it's an existing tower, but two service companies are using it. One service company owns it, another one is renting the right to be on top, to have their extender poles, whatever. They don't want that.
It's a
They wanna be on their
hypothetical,
own
it's a
tower.
hypothetical existing tower.
On the
Hypothetically.
same property?
Yeah,
I don't believe so. I think they have to go to their own separate property.
yeah,
But
let's
I'm
just
not-
put a pin on it now. I don't wanna get too far into
Yeah,
it, just cause it gets too specific, and,
Fair enough. Yep.
you know, I don't wanna have anything come back on us. Yeah, I think, was there
You're right. You're right.
anything else pressing for
No,
today?
that was it. Just
Last chance for Kevin.
Thanks, Kev.
Yeah, see you guys later. Thanks for embarrassing me right off the bat.
Oh, you're welcome. Look good.
Easier to do it this way. But again, my only thing is just try to keep everyone prepared for the transition, because I'm sure the folks in town are gonna need a little help as well, so it may take a little bit of teamwork to kind of get something.
We still have a lot of continued cases too, that
Yes, I'm gonna give you guys, what I'm gonna do is actually gonna try and send you an agenda by the end of this week of what it should look like. Daily, it probably will change, or it may change, but I'll at least have an agenda for you for your next meeting, so you have an idea of what's coming up, and worst case scenario, like this is who's scheduled, and if, at least you have that.
Appreciate that. And I really appreciate wrapping up everything, and if you can just put on the agenda under other, whatever, just possible zoning, subdivision, site plan amendments. To be
I
discussed.
have warrant article,
Perfect.
warrant article discussion.
And again, thank you so much, and I'm not gonna take a motion, I'm just gonna adjourn the meeting.
love it.
Thank you, everybody, I appreciate it.
wheel in his tower.
I wield it.
Yeah, it only works the weekends.
Thank you, John, for being here. I know you've got a lot of late meetings.